Fiancé blames me for his life choices, then breaks up. Am I the asshole for being disgusted and just saying okay? Original post. So, IDK man. I, 28, have been with my fiancé, Alex 34, since 2020. We met at a friend's party, hit it off, and have had been together ever since. He finished his doctorate in economics just last year. Since then he has been working at the university. I have my master's in media sciences and decided to start working instead of going for a PhD. Okay, so the problem is that Alex broke up with me last Monday. It was literally so surreal and honestly, just weird. For the past few months, he'd been acting strange. He was making demands and then dropping them immediately. A few examples. He told me we were going to paint our walls back from dark green to white. When I asked why, he just said, "For fuck's sake, forget it," and never brought it up again, even when I asked. Another time, he came home and got mad because I was sitting on the couch with my head covered in a blanket. I had cramps. He was upset because I was just sitting there watching Netflix. Mind you, the house was spotless. When I tried to talk about it, he said, "Forget it, it's not a big deal." This kind of thing became common. Every time I tried to communicate, tried to figure out what was going on, whether it was something I did or maybe he was just stressed at work, he would just say everything was fine, but he was clearly seething with rage. I didn't even have to do anything. He would find something to complain about: the apartment, clothes, me, work, etc. So I gave him space, which apparently was also wrong. I told him I was going to help my parents with repairs for a few days, and somehow that was also wrong because he wanted to renovate the apartment too. Then, on Monday, I got a text saying we needed to talk. I knew what was coming, and after the last few months, I had made peace with it. When I came home, he was sitting on the couch. He didn't even wait for me to take off my jacket before saying, "I want to break up." Then the verbal diarrhea started. He told me he resented me. First, because I didn't pursue my academic career further, even though I was capable, and he didn't want to upset me at the time. Then, when I started making more money, since he didn't make much as a PhD student, he felt like I should have the last word financially, and he hated it. Mind you, I never said anything like, "It's my money, so I have the final say." That's a rule he imposed on himself, and he hated it. He said he hated our paint scheme, the couch, and even our fucking crockpot. Then, he told me he had rejected a better PhD program to stay here because I had already started my job by the time he got the acceptance letters. Only, he never told me he had even applied overseas. He said a few months ago he checked in with a friend who's in that program, saw how they were thriving, and decided I ruined his life. He said I had too much control over his life and that he hated the idea that I could just decide not to pay for things and fuck him over. I honestly don't even know what that means. He also said he hated that all his friends loved me and didn't let him vent about me. Then he said again, "I'm done." I was floored. I had already made peace with the idea that we were ending, and it hurt, but after that rant, I was just disgusted. I looked at him, probably with a disgusted expression, and said, "Okay?" He lost it. He said this is exactly what he meant, that it was horrible. We had been together for 4 years, and all I had to say was okay to our breakup. I just asked if he wanted to stay here while he figured out where to go. He said, "Typical, of course you're holding the apartment over me," and started ranting again, so I just left. I told my parents, and they're also confused. My dad suggested I reach out to our landlord and explain the situation to see what options I have. I can keep paying the rent no problem myself. He covered the utilities and some subscriptions. Just to reiterate, I never had a problem with this. I saw that he was chasing his dream, and that was more important to me than a 50-50 financial split. I make good money and am happy at my job. I never saw it as slaving away. I always had the mentality that my money was our money because we were building a life together. Of course, I had my own savings and fun money, but I honestly never cared. As long as I felt he was working towards something and wasn't taking advantage of me, I was fine with it. More than fine. Alex is still mad. He's going between texting me like a robot about the logistics of the split to being a seething asshole complaining about everything. I'm not even hurt anymore. I just feel nauseated by him at this point. I don't know. Should I have reacted differently? Edit. Thank you for all your opinions. It was nice to get this off my chest, lol. Just to clarify, that I don't feel like a victim. I feel like something happened, and my relationship just turned bad. He behaved like an asshole, but that is the extent of it. Very clearly, something is going on. But he doesn't want me to be part of whatever it is, and I have to respect that. Now I just have to detangle myself legally from him, and after that, I'll just be left alone with my ugly green wall color. I think I might also adopt a cat as my ex was really allergic. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, NTA. Dude basically said he hates you and everything about you. What are you supposed to do? Beg for his love when you can find someone who'll give it to you readily? Nah. Sorry this happened and that you were blindsided, but this will be a good thing in the long run. On to the next. FYIW. He sounds jealous, insecure and emotionally stunted. If what you've written is how things played out, then you dodged a huge bullet. Ope. He was basically doing his own renditions of 10 things I hate about you. I don't know. I mean, he wants to break up with me. Why would I plead? It is done to a deleted comment. I was really confused trying to take everything in. He talked really fast and a lot. So I did not know what else to say. Also because everything I do is wrong. I think he would have been even more annoyed if I started to cry or something. Ghost him now. I can't ghost him. We have to talk about the lease, about our wedding savings account and a few other things. To another commenter. Yes, that is easy said. But I have to wait to get a response from the landlord, we have to inform the bank etc. etc. So until I don't have confirmation that I am in the clear, I am keeping him unblocked. I have him muted. The all commenter. Sounds like his ego couldn't handle you being the breadwinner. Not your problem, he could have communicated like an adult rather than seething in his own insecurities. He sounds emotionally weak. Oop. Which is so dumb. He is a doctor in economy and past pursuing becoming a professor. Commenter. Dude basically hates himself for decisions he took without ever consulting you. He chose his comforts, but now since others seem in a better position, he is venting on you and making you the culprit. NTA. But your man has a little brain and doesn't know what to do with it. Oop. I would have supported him if he wanted to move away. IDK if we would have stayed together because LDRs are hard, but I would have been 100% supportive. Maybe he resented you for being successful while he wasn't. But that is the thing. He was successful. He has even published a few papers in important magazines and is on the way to become a junior professor. He is objectively really successful. This is all just so weird. Commenter. Girl, I've been with a man like that. They want drama. They want toxicity. They will fuck up your life out of pure insecurity and hate. You dodged a massive bullet. I'm sorry this happened, you deserve better. Wish you the best OOP. Then I hope he meets the telenovela star of his dreams. I prefer my boring happy life. Commenter. What country are you in? Here in the US, the average person would have accumulated debt if they made it that far in their education. Germany update. Post. To start, Alex moved out pretty quickly after the breakup. He has been staying with a friend, and we sorted out everything like mail, subscriptions, and the lease. I'm also in the process of adopting a cat. Her name is Luna, but I have been thinking about changing it since my family already has 2 pets named Luna, a Moon, and Kamar. She is still at her foster home for now, but I have visited her a few times, and I already adore her. She is a scrappy little tabby who follows her foster mom around like a shadow, and I can't wait for her to move in during the first week of December. I've already gotten her bowls, toys, and a bed by the window ready. Now on to what happened. Last week, I was out showing someone around the city. He is the son of my parents' friends who recently moved here for work. My parents asked me to help him get familiar with the area, so I agreed. It was nothing special, just walking around, grabbing coffee, and pointing out useful spots in the city. Apparently, Alex saw us. I didn't even realize he was there, but later that night, I started getting texts from an unknown number. I guess he got a new number since I blocked his old one. The texts were just weird. He accused me of flaunting my new relationship in public, said I must have been seeing this guy before we broke up, and told me that everything he suspected about me was true. I didn't respond. I wasn't going to entertain his paranoia. The messages kept coming though. They went from angry to desperate, with him saying things like, "At least admit you were lying to me," and, "Was anything about us even real?" It was exhausting and honestly a little scary to see how quickly he spiraled. For the record, this guy isn't my boyfriend. He's not even someone I'm interested in. He's just the son of family friends who needed help settling into the city. The whole thing was completely innocent, but Alex has twisted it into some kind of betrayal in his head. What gets me is how little Alex seems to know me. I'm not the type of person to jump into a relationship so soon after everything that happened. Even if I were, it wouldn't be any of his business. We are done. I've made that clear. After I didn't respond to his texts, Alex started calling. I didn't pick up, but the voicemails were a mix of angry rants and desperate pleas. I ended up blocking his new number too. It feels ridiculous that I have to keep doing this, but I guess this is where we are now. Then this weekend, I went out to a bar with my friends. A few hours in, guess who walked in? Alex. I don't know if it was a coincidence or if he followed me there, but as soon as he spotted me, he came straight over. He was clearly upset, asking to talk, and I told him no. My friend stepped in, and thankfully, he left without causing a scene, but it ruined my night. It felt like I couldn't escape him, no matter where I went or what I did. When I got home later that night, I was completely drained. I had just started to relax when I heard a knock on my door. It was Alex, standing there in tears. He started crying, saying he missed me, that he didn't understand why I was doing this to him, and that he didn't know how to move on. It was like all the anger from earlier had been replaced with this desperate sadness. I didn't let him in. I told him he needed to leave, and if he didn't, I would call someone to make him leave. He begged me to listen, but I just closed the door. I spent the rest of the night feeling shaken and honestly a little scared. I don't know what he's going through. I wrote to his best friend about the situation but pleaded to talk to him. He said he would. I'm seriously considering getting a new phone number and possibly even talking to someone about how to handle this legally if it keeps happening. It feels unfair that I have to go to these lengths just to have some peace, but I don't see another option. Update post 2, November 28, 2024, 3 days later. Thanks for the concern and support I've received. I'm fine, really. A lot of people suggested things like getting a restraining order, but I just want to clarify that it's not as simple as walking into an office and asking for one. The process involves proving there's an immediate danger to your safety, providing evidence like texts, calls, or witnesses, and then attending court to get approval. It's not something you can do lightly or without solid proof. And no, I'm obviously not getting a gun. I've also seen people diagnosing Alex with various mental health issues, and I want to ask everyone to stop. Yes, something is clearly wrong, but I'm not a doctor, and neither are most of you. It's not fair or helpful to label him with something like bipolar disorder or anything else without real expertise. For what it's worth, I don't actually feel like I'm in danger. In the past month, these were the only 3 incidents that happened. I don't think he's actively stalking me so much as he just knew my patterns. The bar we were at is my favorite spot, and it was a party of one of my closest friends, so it makes sense that he might have guessed I'd be there. When he showed up at my apartment, he knew what time I usually got home. The city tour is the only thing that might have been more intentional, but it could also have been a coincidence that triggered everything. Anyway, this is the end of it. Yesterday, Alex came over with his mom and one of his friends. At first, I didn't want to let him in, but he promised me that this would be the last time I ever saw him. I agreed, mostly because his mom and friend were there, and I figured it would be more awkward to argue on my doorstep. When we sat down, Alex admitted that he was going through a crisis. He told me he was mad at me, but he didn't know why. He said he doesn't like me, that I annoy him, but that he weirdly still loves me, which is why he went crazy when he saw me with someone else. He assured me there wasn't anyone else on his end either. He said he felt like he was going insane. He talked about how he feels judged for being older and not being able to give me the life he thinks I deserve. He said he hates his colleagues, hates his job, hates everything right now, and that everyone and everything annoys him. He told me he feels old and like he should want kids at this point in his life, but he doesn't, and that thought terrifies him. He said he just wants to be alone and not talk to anyone for a while. I didn't say much. I mostly just nodded because I didn't know what to say. After he was done, he told me he was leaving. He's on some kind of mental health leave from work, and he said he's leaving the country on Sunday. He's going to South America to spend time in nature and find himself. He thanked me for everything and said he was sorry for how he acted. Then he just got up, grabbed the few things he had left at my place, and walked out. His mom was inconsolable. She kept apologizing to me over and over, saying how embarrassed she was by his behavior. I told her it was okay and that she didn't need to apologize to him. She cried a lot, and his friend ended up driving her home after Alex left. I don't really know how I feel about all of this. Part of me is relieved that it's over. Part of me feels sad for him because he clearly doesn't know how to deal with everything he's feeling. Mostly, though, I just feel tired. I'm glad he's taking steps to figure himself out, but it's not my responsibility anymore. Some of OOP's comments on not getting a gun, editor's note. It was more than likely a downvoted troll who asked, but I liked OOP's response. You can't buy guns at an Aldi. It's more dangerous to own a gun when you have no training with it than not owning one. Commenter. He's a little young for a midlife crisis, but certainly, the man is having issues with his life choices, and it's tearing him apart. Your empathy is warranted, but in the end, those troubles are his, not yours. Hopefully, this is the last you'll hear of him. Good luck to you. OOP. It's just a life crisis then, I guess. Who knows? Update, same post. December 3, 2024, 5 days later, about 6 weeks from OG post. Edit December 3rd. He is definitely gone. My friend sent me some of his Insta stories of him at the airport and then about a day later in Bogota. So, yep, he is gone. I am safe, and on Friday, I get to pick up Helios Maximus first, LOL, Heli for short. I carried my family for too long, sacrificing for my golden child sister. Now she spends the money I give her and still turns around to blame me. Clara carried her family like a worn tapestry, its threads frayed and colors faded, yet clinging to her frame with a stubborn weight. The stoop in her shoulders, the weariness in her eyes, they were silent testament to years spent shouldering burdens that were never truly hers. In the sun-drenched, bustling diner where she worked, Clara was a whirlwind of efficiency, balancing plates of pancakes and pouring endless cups of coffee with practiced ease. But beneath the surface, a quiet storm brewed. Growing up in the small town of Willow Creek, Clara had always been the anchor, the steady hand amidst the whirlwind of Daisy's charm. Daisy, with her honeyed voice and theatrical flair, had always been the family's darling. Clara, with her quiet diligence, was simply the one who made things work. Their parents, caught in Daisy's radiant orbit, often overlooked Clara's own aspirations, her dreams of opening a small bakery, tucked away on a quiet corner, filled with the aroma of cinnamon and warm bread. The call came during Clara's lunch break, a familiar plea laced with a familiar guilt. "Clara, honey," their mother's voice crooned through the phone. "Daisy's had a bit of a setback. Her acting class is due, and she doesn't have the money for it right now. Would you be able to help?" Clara stared out the window at the bustling street, her sandwich untouched. Daisy's setbacks were a recurring theme, each one met with Clara's unwavering support. "Mom," she said, trying to keep the weariness from her voice, "I'm working 2 jobs as is. It's getting harder to make ends meet myself." "But she's your sister, Clara," her mother replied, that familiar refrain a weight on Clara's shoulders. "Family looks after each other." And that was that. The decision made, the responsibility transferred, and Clara's dreams pushed further out of reach. A week later, Clara, while reconciling her bank statements, discovered a series of extravagant purchases on Daisy's part, a designer handbag, a weekend getaway, all funded with Clara's help. A cold anger simmered within her, a resentment she'd long suppressed. That night, sleep eluded her. She tossed and turned, the weight of her family pressing down on her. When would it end? When would they stop talking? She finally drifted off to sleep, only to be haunted by a vivid dream of Daisy, dressed in a shimmering gown, standing on a stage bathed in light, while Clara, in the shadows, handed her bouquets of flowers, each one heavier than the last. The following weeks were a blur of exhaustion and resentment. Clara found herself snapping at customers, losing her patience with her coworkers. The diner, once a familiar and comforting space, now felt like a gilded cage. Then came the incident that shattered the fragile facade. Clara received a scathing text message from Daisy, laced with jealousy and resentment, accusing her of being bitter and envious of Daisy's success. It cut deep, confirmation that Daisy didn't see Clara as a loving sister, but as a tool, a means to an end. That night, Clara did something she hadn't done in years. She reached out to Aunt Maeve, her mother's sister, a woman known for her sharp wit and unwavering honesty. Over steaming cups of tea, Clara poured out her heart, the years of accumulated resentment finally spilling over. Aunt Maeve listened patiently, her eyes filled with a knowing sadness. When Clara had finished, she reached across the table and took her niece's hand. "Clara," she said gently, "you have a heart of gold, but even gold can be worn thin. It's time you started taking care of yourself." Her words resonated deep within Clara, a validation she desperately needed. The Reddit update. For the first time in a long time, Clara decided to take charge. She sat down and wrote a message in a Reddit group that touched her heart after searching, "Sister Relationship AITA. AITA for cutting my sister off financially after years of supporting her. I, 32 female, have been supporting my younger sister, Daisy, 28 female, for years. She's an aspiring actress and constantly needs money for acting classes, headshots, etc. I work 2 jobs to help her out. I've always felt obligated to help, as our parents favor her and make me feel guilty if I don't. Recently, I discovered she's been spending the money I give her on frivolous things, while still asking me for more. I confronted her, and she was incredibly rude and dismissive. I'm tired of being used. I want to focus on my own dreams, but I feel guilty cutting her off. AITA for prioritizing myself for once." The responses poured in, a tidal wave of support and validation. Many shared similar stories of family dynamics, of being the reliable one, the one who always gave. The overwhelming consensus was clear: Clara was not the asshole. Inspired by the Reddit comments, Clara made a decision. She informed her parents, gently but firmly, that she would no longer be able to provide financial assistance to Daisy. She braced herself for the backlash, for the familiar guilt trips and accusations. The storm came, as expected. Her mother accused her of being selfish and unsupportive. Her father, for once breaking his silence, berated her for abandoning her sister in her time of need. "I'm not abandoning her," Clara said, her voice shaking but firm. "I'm just choosing to take care of myself for once." She hung up the phone, her hands trembling. The familiar guilt gnawed at her, but beneath it, a flicker of defiance ignited. She found work through the app Fiverr, a source for odd jobs and gigs. She used her earnings to take a business class at the local community college. As she continued her work there, she found new resources and sources for inspiration. That night, she received a series of angry, accusatory messages from Daisy. "How could you do this to me?" One message read, "You're ruining my life." Clara stared at the messages, the familiar sting of guilt rising within her. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and then did something she never thought she could do. She deleted the messages and turned off her phone. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace, a quiet strength that had been buried beneath layers of obligation and resentment. The next Reddit update, "I cut my sister off, and my family is furious, but I'm starting to feel free. Hi Reddit, I wanted to thank everyone for their amazing support on my last post. It gave me the courage to finally cut my sister off financially. As expected, my family is not happy. They've been bombarding me with calls and texts, accusing me of being selfish and ruining my sister's life. It's been incredibly difficult, but I'm holding my ground. I'm finally prioritizing myself and my own dreams. It feels scary, but also incredibly liberating. Thank you for helping me find my voice." Liam was a frequent customer at the diner, a local artist with a kind smile and a keen eye. He had noticed the change in Clara, the quiet strength that now radiated from her. He offered her friendship, a listening ear, and unwavering support. One afternoon, Liam stopped by the diner with a small painting, a vibrant depiction of the diner's exterior, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. "I wanted to give you this," he said, handing Clara the painting. "I've been wanting to create an image for you, so you will never forget what has touched your heart." Clara stared at the painting, her heart swelling with emotion. It was more than just a picture. It was a validation of her worth, a reminder that she was seen, appreciated, and valued for who she was, not for what she could give. The following months were a journey of self-discovery and healing. Clara spent her free time attending the business classes, poring over cookbooks, and sketching designs for her dream bakery. She reconnected with old friends, joined a local hiking group, and started painting again, rediscovering the joy and creativity that had been dormant for so long. One day, while browsing through a local antique shop, Clara stumbled upon a beautiful, hand-painted sign, its script elegant and timeless. It read, "Clara's Corner, Bakery and Dreams." A wave of emotion washed over her, a mix of sadness, hope, and unwavering determination. She purchased the sign, a symbol of her commitment to her own dreams, a promise to herself that she would never again sacrifice her own happiness for the sake of others. The final confrontation with Daisy came unexpectedly. Clara received a frantic call from her mother, begging her to help Daisy, who had gotten into financial trouble with a shady acting coach. Clara listened patiently, her heart aching for her sister, but her resolve unwavering. "Mom," she said gently but firmly, "I'm sorry, but I can't. Daisy needs to learn to take responsibility for her own choices." The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, her mother hung up, the final thread of obligation severed. That night, Clara received a text message from Daisy. "I hate you," it read. "You've ruined everything." Clara stared at the message, the familiar sting of guilt rising within her. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and then, with a sense of finality, blocked Daisy's number. The past, with its burdens and obligations, was finally behind her. She was free. The bakery dream. Clara threw herself into her work at the diner, saving every penny she could. She studied business plans, scouted locations, and perfected her recipes. Liam became her unofficial advisor, offering his artistic eye and unwavering support. One blustery autumn day, Clara signed the lease on a small, unassuming storefront on a quiet corner of Willow Creek. It wasn't much, but it was hers. A blank canvas upon which to create her dream. With the help of Liam and a few close friends, Clara transformed the space into a cozy haven, filled with warm colors, inviting aromas, and handmade touches. Years later, Clara's Corner Bakery and Dreams became a beloved fixture in Willow Creek, a place where locals gathered to savor Clara's delicious pastries, sip steaming cups of coffee, and share stories with the warm-hearted owner. It gave a sense of quiet confidence. She found the energy to live life and give inspiration to others, with her culinary masterpieces and warm heart. It helped her to find love and a peace. One sunny afternoon, as Clara was arranging a display of freshly baked lilac-infused cookies, the bell above the door jingled. A woman walked in, her face lined with age and regret, but her eyes still holding a flicker of Daisy's youthful spark. It was her mother. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of years hanging heavy between them. Then, her mother stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Clara," she said. "I just wanted to tell you, I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry. For everything." Clara's heart softened, a wave of forgiveness washing over her. "It's okay, Mom," she said, her voice filled with a quiet grace. "It's all in the past." Her mother smiled, a genuine heartfelt smile. "Can I try one of those lilac cookies?" she asked. Clara returned the smile. "Of course," she said, handing her mother a cookie. "They're my favorite." As her mother savored the delicate flavor, Clara glanced around her bakery, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had built this, brick by brick, dream by dream, from the ashes of her past. Reddit post. Conclusion. Final update. My life is different because I broke free and it felt amazing. Hey Reddit. So, what's up for those of you keeping up with my story? Let me tell you all of what's going on with myself after I asked the question for the ages on AITA. Things were pretty tough for a while, but breaking free from my sister's expectations and the expectations of my parents was the best thing I could have ever done. Here I am, with Clara's Corner, that provides me peace and happiness, and a new relationship. Here's what my bakery is like now. I just got back from my family, and after so long in distance, things were worth it. But, I am grateful for those of you who followed me. Thanks again. Clara's Corner. Epilogue. Years later, Clara sat on the porch of her small bakery, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of lilac and gold. Liam sat beside her, his hand gently resting on hers. Daisy, she had learned, had finally found her footing, working as a drama teacher at a local high school, sharing her passion with a new generation. They didn't see each other often, but there was a quiet understanding between them, a fragile peace that had finally taken root. Clara closed her eyes, breathing in the sweet scent of lilacs, and a sense of contentment settled over her. She had carried the weight of her family for so long, but now, she was free to carry her own dreams, her own hopes, her own happiness. And that, she knew, was a weight worth bearing. That's all she wanted to know, and to remember the moments that helped her to arrive at this point in her life. A new love, a family, and friends to cherish, with all this in her heart and mind. She could have had a quiet life after everything that has happened. But, in the end, she broke through. With the people that have hurt her. And she now understood why breaking point was key for the steps she would take forward. Kicked out for refusing the family business, I lived in my car, built software for small businesses, and turned it into my own company. What do you want to do? The sound of my father's voice shook the designer light fittings in our immaculate suburban kitchen. His face turned to a frightening purple, already red from his third scotch of the evening. I repeated, attempting to sound steady, that I want to launch a software company. I've created a prototype already. This platform is beneficial to small enterprises. He slammed his glass flat and said, "Absolutely not. We didn't pay for your Stanford degree so you could waste your life on some pipe dream. You're joining the family business?" End of discussion. I looked to my mom for encouragement. She remained motionless at our marble island, keeping her customary cautious distance from confrontation. It gleamed on her wrist, the diamond tennis bracelet I'd given her for Christmas, purchased with my earnings from covert freelance coding assignments. "Mom," I attempted. "You've seen how many small businesses are struggling with digital transformation. My platform could really help." She groaned and looked at her manicure. "Ethan," she said. "Your father's right. This tech obsession of yours, it's not practical. Sterling Enterprises needs you. The company's been in the family for 3 generations. In reality, they meant that our family's industrial supply company, Sterling Enterprises, was failing. They needed my programming expertise to update their antiquated systems so they could compete in a market that was digitizing quickly. But my aspirations were loftier. When I said, "I'm not asking for money. I have savings. I just need some time," my dad said, I'll laugh. You want time to play with computers while real businesses are at stake? While your sister is already making partner at her law firm? Yes, Claire, my ideal elder sister. The benchmark by which all of my shortcomings were evaluated was Harvard Law, the youngest partner in her firm's history, and she was married to a physician. I insisted, this isn't playing. I've already got interest from potential clients. Small businesses need affordable software solutions, and the big tech companies aren't serving them. My platform was chilled by my father. Just inches from my head, the glass broke against the wall. My father yelled, "Enough," as liquor trickled down the pricey wall covering. You have a choice, join Sterling Enterprises on Monday or get out. See how long you last without our support. Despite flinching at the sound, my mother remained silent. She didn't. I glanced at both of them, my mother averting my gaze, my father shaking with anger. The choice I made would alter everything. Remarkably composed, I got up and said, I choose out. What, I'm leaving? Good luck modernizing Sterling Enterprises without me. You ungrateful. I was on my way upstairs when my father began to approach me. This was a moment I had anticipated. Essentials like a laptop, a portable hard drive, and 2 changes of clothes were already in my backpack. I had a safety deposit box where I kept my vital paperwork. My parents couldn't access the account where I kept the majority of my savings. My dad yelled up the stairs, "You have an hour? Then I want you out of this house." I retrieved my favorite hoodie, my emergency pack, and a final glance at my childhood bedroom. My trophies from coding competitions, science fair prizes, and the framed article about the high school software I created that attracted Stanford's notice were still on the wall. It buzzed on my phone. Finn, my best friend, texted me. Operation Escape still on? Happening now, I responded by typing. Plan B initiated. When I initially made the decision to follow my company goals, Finn and I had simulated this situation months prior. I could stay in his tiny flat above his family's eatery until I was able to support myself. My mother eventually spoke as I was about to leave. Ethan, please be reasonable. Your father only wants what's best. No, I interrupted her. He wants what's best for Sterling Enterprises. There's a difference. I left without turning around. It felt unreal the first night in my automobile. I parked on a quiet street 2 blocks away from my parents' house, far enough away that they wouldn't notice me but close enough to keep a solid connection to their fast Wi-Fi network, which I had set up and secured myself. The familiar rhythm of keyboards drowned out the voice in my head that told me I was making a big mistake as I continued to code on my laptop, which shone in the darkness. When Finn handed me food, he remarked, "You sure about this? Is Mother's incredible pad thai? My couch is still available." I shook my head and showed him my workplace, which included a laptop, a power bank for emergencies, and a mobile hotspot for backup internet. I need to stay mobile for now. Can't risk them finding me and trying to force me back. He looked at my computer screen. What exactly are you building? I displayed the interface of my prototype. I call it Smart Start. It's an all-in-one digital platform for small businesses. Point of sale, inventory management, customer relationships, online presence, everything they need to compete in today's market, but simplified and affordable, like what your dad's company needs. Similar, but designed for smaller businesses that can't afford enterprise solutions. I reflected on all the neighborhood stores I had witnessed struggle and fail due to their inability to adapt to the digital revolution. There's a huge market being ignored by big tech. Finn gave a slow nod. A cash register from the 1990s and paper order tickets were still in use at his family's eatery. How long until it's ready? Basic version, 2 months. I've got most of the core functions working. Just need to polish the interface and add some features. I kept from him the fact that I was also surreptitiously recording every flaw in Sterling Enterprises systems, including every security flaw, inefficiency, and lost chance for technological advancement. I was creating it because I knew they would need it someday, not because I was spiteful. They simply weren't aware of it yet. Life fell into an odd pattern. I would work from several coffee shops over the day, purchasing just enough to warrant using their Wi-Fi and space. I would park close to my parents' house at night and utilize their fast internet to upload code and execute intricate tests. Coffee, protein bars, and leftovers from Finn's family were my main sources of nutrition. I learned which parking lots were safe to sleep in and which ones to avoid, and I took a shower at a cheap gym membership. Although uncomfortable, it served a useful purpose. I could devote all of my attention to creating Smart Start if there were no outside distractions, no incessant criticism from my father, and no passive disappointment from my mother. My sister Claire attempted to step in one weekend. "This is ridiculous, Ethan," she said after finding me at the coffee shop where I usually go. You're living in your car to prove what? That you can be as stubborn as Dad? I continued to code without looking up. I'm building something important. You're throwing away a guaranteed future with the family business. I stated plainly. The family business is dying. Dad's too proud to admit it. But their systems are ancient. Their processes are inefficient. And their competitors are eating them alive. Then help fix it, I said, finally looking her in the eye. That's exactly what I'm doing, just not the way they want. She put a big envelope on my table before departing in frustration. $5,000 in cash was found inside, along with the words, "Don't be an idiot. Come home." I upgraded my coding tools and purchased a better laptop with the money. In the second month, the breakthrough occurred. A local bookshop, a family-run hardware store, and a developing food truck company were among the small businesses who approached me about beta testing Smart Start. They were all having trouble with the same issues that my platform was intended to address. The owner of the bookstore responded, "This is exactly what we need." Following my demonstration of the inventory management system. QuickBooks is too complicated, and the custom solutions are too expensive. How much would this cost? I gave her a price that made her smile. It was purposefully less than the going rate in order to encourage word of mouth. I had clients that were paying by the third month. Little sums, but consistent revenue. Enough to rent a little studio apartment, but I didn't include it in the lease so my parents wouldn't find out. Then came the call that made all the difference. The authoritative, business-like voice said, "Is this Ethan Sterling?" "Yes, this is." "Owen Grant from Zenith Ventures. We've been hearing interesting things about your Smart Start platform." My heart stopped beating. One of the nation's most prominent early-stage investors was Zenith Ventures. One of our portfolio companies mentioned your solution. Said, "It's exactly what the small business market needs. Would you be interested in discussing potential investment?" I tightened my hold on my phone as I recalled all the evenings I spent coding in my car, the meals I skipped to gain server time, and the uncertainties and anxieties I had set aside in order to follow this goal. "Yes," I said. "I would definitely be interested." At the time, I had no idea that this talk would start a series of events that would not only confirm my vision but also confront my family's financial failures in a way that neither of us could have anticipated. My father would have approved of the Zenith Ventures office, which was located on the top level of a shiny downtown tower. I tried not to look like someone who had been living in his van 2 months prior, rearranged my one nice suit, and purchased used items for investor meetings. Owen Grant had the easy assurance of someone who had made his wealth in the first boom, and he was younger than I had anticipated, possibly in his early 40s. "Walk me through it again," he urged, pointing to the enormous screen in the conference room that was showing my Smart Start demonstration. I launched the user interface, which had grown as recognizable as my own image. Small businesses are drowning in digital complexity. They need e-commerce, inventory management, customer relationship tools, but existing solutions are either too expensive, too complicated, or too limited. The point of sale, inventory management, customer communications, and even basic analytics were all connected and easy enough for anyone to use, and I showed how a small business owner could set up their complete digital presence in less than an hour. "And this scales?" was Owen's full question. "The architecture is cloud-based, modular. We can add features as businesses grow, integrate with other platforms, but the core stays simple." Slowly, he nodded. "And your current users?" 28 paying customers, all from word of mouth, 0 churn rate. Average user engagement is 4 hours daily. That's impressive. He displayed a second screen. My company's incorporation documents. Innovative Solutions LLC, registered 6 months ago. Yes. All self-funded so far. He looked closely at me. "You're Charles Sterling's son." My heart skipped a beat. "You know my father?" He looked contemplative as he said, "Sterling Enterprises was one of my first investments back in the day, before your father bought out the minority shareholders. They're having trouble adapting to digital markets, I hear." I maintained a neutral expression. "I wouldn't know. I'm not involved with Sterling Enterprises." He tapped his iPad, and a fresh document showed up on the screen. "Interesting. We'd like to offer you seed funding, $2 million for a 20% stake." I made an effort to hide my trembling hands. $2 million was more money than I ever thought I would have. Owen went on, "There's one condition. We want you to expand your focus. Small businesses are good, but mid-sized enterprises need these solutions too. Companies like, say, Sterling Enterprises." And there it was. The trap I dreaded and had been anticipating. "You want me to target my family's business?" He gave a small smile. I want you to target a market segment that desperately needs modernization. The fact that your father's company might benefit is incidental. I reflected on the numerous evenings I had parked outside my folks' house, utilizing their Wi-Fi to construct something they rejected. Regarding my mother's quiet and my father's fury. About the small enterprises that Smart Start has already helped flourish. I'll need full control of the company's direction, I replied. No interference with the core mission. He slid a folder over the table and said, of course. Have your lawyers review it. But Ethan, don't wait too long. This market won't stay open forever. 3 days later, after going over every detail with my sister Claire, who was still a better lawyer than she realized, I signed the contract. You're really doing this, she remarked as she returned the documents with the annotations. Going directly against Dad's business? I'm building something that could save his business, I replied. If he's willing to see it. She gave a headshake. You know he won't, not coming from you. Of course, she was correct, but I also had a strategy. Scaling up over the next 6 months was a blur. I would have given my mother a heart attack if I had rented actual office space in a converted warehouse. Hired salespeople, designers, and developers. When Finn took over as head of customer success, his knowledge of small business owners proved to be quite helpful. Smart Start expanded more quickly than Owen had anticipated. Business circles began to hear about the platform that truly lived up to the hype. From dozens to hundreds to thousands, our user base grew rapidly. Finally, the tech press took notice of us, and then came the piece that made all the difference. Digital David versus Goliath, How Smart Start is Disrupting Enterprise Software. The article commended our ability to assist small firms compete with larger corporations, our creativity, and our emphasis on user experience. The fact that I was Charles Sterling's estranged son was also mentioned, almost as an afterthought. Minutes after the piece went up, my phone rang. Claire. She said. Dad's furious. Without introducing herself. He's calling an emergency board meeting. Why? Smart Start isn't competing with Sterling Enterprises. No, but 3 of their biggest customers just announced they're switching to your platform. Stunned, I reclined. I hadn't observed that mid-sized organizations were beginning to use Smart Start because we've been so focused on tiny enterprises. There's more, insisted Claire. Their latest quarterly numbers, they're bad. Ethan, really bad. The board is talking about forcing Dad out if he doesn't modernize their systems. I retrieved the public financial information for Sterling Enterprises. The figures were worse than I had anticipated. Within 6 months, their stock had fallen 40%. The rate of customer attrition was increasing. They were practically on the verge of going bankrupt due to their antiquated software systems. They need help, I muttered aloud. They need you, she said. But you know Dad will never admit it. Owen Grant's remarks regarding focusing on mid-sized businesses and the several elements we included in Smart Start that may help businesses like Sterling Enterprises were on my mind. Perhaps, I replied softly, they don't have to recognize me. I called an emergency team meeting that evening. I revealed the prototype I had been working on covertly, a new division aimed at larger companies that was based on the Smart Start architecture but had extra capabilities for intricate operations. We're launching enterprise solutions, I said. Finn scowled. I thought we were staying focused on small business. We are. But there's a whole segment of mid-sized companies being crushed between small business agility and big corporation resources. They need what we've built. I neglected to mention that every feature in Enterprise Solutions was created especially to address the issues facing Sterling Enterprises. That I had devoted months to examining their shortcomings and developing fixes for problems they were unaware they had yet. For weeks, the team worked nonstop. We introduced Enterprise Solutions under a different name through a subsidiary that was difficult to link to me. Similar to Sterling Enterprises, the marketing campaign focused on well-established enterprises who were having difficulty embracing digital change. We waited after that. It took very little time. Days after our launch, the new Chief Technology Officer of Sterling Enterprises, who had been hired in a panic following their most recent system failure, contacted us. The location of the meeting was their headquarters. I watched over a secure video link while my father and his board were shown Enterprise Solutions by our sales team, who were specifically selected to be unrelated to me. I witnessed his realization that this was precisely what they required. Saw him struggle to acknowledge it. Observed the enthusiastic inquiries from the board members regarding cost and implementation. Our sales lead clarified, the investment would be significant but the potential return. My father cut me off, saying, we'll need to see other options. An elderly board member, Jonathan, leaned forward. We've seen 12 presentations in 2 months. This is the only solution that actually addresses our specific needs, and their track record, impressive results with similar companies. Another board member added their voice. My cousin's manufacturing business switched to their system last quarter. Saw immediate improvements. I saw the expression on my father's face as he knew he was losing the battle. Change was what the board desired. Their clients insisted on it. Their best chance of surviving was with enterprise solutions. Fine, he snarled. Start the procurement process. With an odd sense of emptiness, I shut down the video feed. I had succeeded. Produced just what was required by Sterling Enterprises. Confirmed that my vision was correct. Why, therefore, didn't it seem like a win? When Claire contacted again 3 days later, the response was received. She said, "Dad's drinking," without introducing herself. Really drinking? Mom's talking about separation. Not because of enterprise solutions, but because he is aware of his failure. My gut nodded. He had to go pleading with outsiders for assistance because the business was collapsing. She hesitated. He keeps saying he should have listened to you. I reflected on all the decisions that had brought us to this point as I gazed out my office window at the metropolitan skyline. My pride, my father's intransigence, and the barriers of silence we established between us. What if, I thought to myself, there was a way to save both the company and his pride? How? I have an idea, but I'll need your help. The board meeting of Sterling Enterprises was set for 9 a.m. Thursday. I watched familiar faces stream into their offices as I waited in my car outside the exact location where I had parked to access their Wi-Fi. Last to arrive was my father, who appeared older than I had recalled. His suit, which was usually spotless, was a little rumpled. His stride was less assured than the one I had grown up admiring. I tapped my phone and asked, "Everything ready?" "All set," the woman said. "The board members are prepped. Owen Grant just arrived, and Mom's in position, though she's still not sure about this." I changed my tie. It was still not the brand my father would pick, but it was a designer now. It has to be today. The Enterprise Solutions contract needs board approval by the end of the week. "Good luck," replied Claire quietly. "Try not to enjoy this too much." Despite my nervousness, I grinned. She was too familiar with me. When I walked in, the security guard looked twice. I had been hauled away the last time I was here following another argument about entering the family business. I was back on my terms now. As I walked in, the boardroom became quiet. My dad's expression quickly changed from astonished to irate to perplexed. Owen Grant, who was seated close to the head of the table, simply nodded as though he had anticipated my arrival. My dad yelled, "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to discuss the Enterprise Solutions contract," I remarked coolly as I set my laptop down on the table. "This is a closed board meeting. Security?" "Actually," Owen replied softly, "Mr. Sterling is here at my request. As the majority investor in Enterprise Solutions, I believe his input is crucial to this discussion." My dad's face turned white. "You what?" My laptop displayed a similar UI when I plugged it in, but not Enterprise Solutions. I chose to show them the original Smart Start dashboard instead, which had my very first designs and notes. "I started building this the day you kicked me out," I said, "using your Wi-Fi. Actually, since I was living in my car at the time." The members of the board shuffled uneasily. My mom eventually turned to face me as she sat calmly in her typical corner seat. I went on. Smart Start grew faster than anyone expected. Small businesses loved it because it solved real problems simply and affordably. But I knew larger companies needed similar solutions. I moved to the interface for Enterprise Solutions. Every feature in this system was designed specifically to address Sterling Enterprises' challenges. The inventory management, the customer tracking, the integration capabilities, all built based on intimate knowledge of what this company needs. My father's voice was trembling with anger as he said, "You've been spying on us." "No," I replied. "I've been trying to save your company. The same company you wanted me to join, but only on your terms." Owen Grant cleared his throat. "The board has reviewed Mr. Sterling's proposal. Enterprise Solutions isn't just a software platform. It's a potential merger opportunity." My dad's head jerked up. "Merger?" I displayed the comprehensive merger proposal that I had been working on for weeks. "Smart Start technology would acquire a controlling interest in Sterling Enterprises," I said. "But the Sterling name stays. The legacy business continues, enhanced by modern technology, and the current CEO transitions to Chairman Emeritus, focusing on strategic partnerships rather than day-to-day operations." There was no sound in the room. My dad whispered, "You want to buy my company?" I clarified, "I want to save it." Transform it into something that honors its history while embracing the future. But it has to happen now, before the market completely passes you by. It was my mother who talked first. Charles, listen to him. Startled, he turned to face her. She had never raised her voice in 30 years of board meetings. I've seen what Ethan built, she added. What he sacrificed to build it. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about family. Family. He laughed loudly. He abandoned the family business. No, I muttered. I found a different way to support it. Every feature, every innovation in enterprise solutions was designed with Sterling Enterprises in mind. Because despite everything, I never stopped believing in what this company could be. I approached his chair and opened a second document on my tablet, my initial business plan, which I had penned in my car the night after I was expelled. The subtitle was Project Phoenix, Modernizing Sterling Enterprises Through Independent Innovation. You. He fixated on the paper. A dawn of recognition. This was your plan all along? Plan B. Actually, Plan A was convincing you to modernize from within. But you weren't ready to listen then. Owen Grant got to his feet. The board needs to vote on this merger proposal by the end of day. I suggest we take a brief recess to process this information. I was left alone with my father as everyone else filed out. He looked lost as he sat there looking over my business proposal. He finally questioned, "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have listened? Really listened, not just heard what you wanted to hear?" He remained silent for a while. "You built all this using our Wi-Fi." I couldn't contain my laughter. "That's what you're focusing on?" "No, he said, stroking his gray hair. "I'm trying to understand how my son went from living in his car to offering to buy my company in less than 2 years. The same way you built this company, by seeing opportunity everyone else missed, by working harder than anyone thought possible. By believing in something bigger than myself." Slowly, he nodded. "Your grandfather would have loved this. You know, he always said the best business lessons come from proving the skeptics wrong. I learned that from you. Actually, all those stories about how you built Sterling Enterprises, how you proved everyone wrong who said it would fail." I took a seat beside him. "I just did it my way instead of yours." The merger was approved by the board in a unanimous vote. After the longest delay of my life, my father cast his vote in favor. The changeover wasn't seamless. Particularly with family companies, change is never easy. However, Sterling Enterprises started to change gradually. The name was retained, but the brand was updated. My grandfather's fundamental business was maintained, but it was improved using technology to enable it to prosper in the digital era. Sterling's steadiness and Smart Start's inventiveness came together to create something that neither business could have done on its own. After a year, I sat in my father's office, which is now our office as he had finally agreed to become chairman emeritus. The quarterly figures we were examining had surpassed all expectations. "You were right," he abruptly remarked. I raised my head. "About what?" "About everything?" He looked directly into my eyes and said, "The technology, the market changes, the need to adapt." He pointed to the table displaying our most recent findings and said, "I was too proud to see it. Too afraid of losing control. And now I'm proud of what you built, what we're building together." It buzzed on my phone. Finn sent us a message regarding a possible new acquisition target. Another family firm in trouble that required precisely what we produced. I pulled up the plan and added, "Speaking of building," asking, "What do you think about expanding our enterprise division?" He grinned. The genuine smile I recalled from my early years, before anxiety and tension had hardened him. "Tell me more." Later that evening, I passed our former residence. There was still a robust Wi-Fi signal. They were unaware that I had changed their system last month. I reflected on that first night in my car, coding under the light of my laptop, driven by resentment, willpower, and the need to prove everyone wrong. I had discovered, however, that success was not about proving others incorrect. It was about establishing your own credibility and creating something so indisputable that even the most ardent doubters had to admit its worth. My mother reminded me to have family supper as my phone chimed once again. These were now routine occurrences, but the discourse had changed from judgment to sincere interest, from criticism to cooperation. I replied back, "Coming, since I couldn't help but send this over the Wi-Fi." She answered right away. "Very funny. Your father says bring the new acquisition proposal, and yes, he's actually smiling about it." Thinking of how far we'd come, from rejection to reunion, made me smile as well. From rivalry to cooperation. From surreptitiously utilizing their Wi-Fi to assisting them in embracing the digital future. Sometimes proving someone wrong isn't the greatest form of retaliation. It's giving them a whole new perspective on what's right. I kept my billion-dollar NFT empire a secret from my family for 15 years, letting them believe I was a failure. On my desk was the invitation to the Sullivan family's yearly reunion. The morning light coming from my penthouse windows caught the gold-embossed writing. The end of 15 years of meticulously kept deceit was imminent, and strangely, it wasn't even my decision. The email that set things off was, Forbes 30 under 40, the new face of digital art. Sophia Sullivan's NFT empire reaches a $3.8 billion valuation. It was scheduled to be published tomorrow, 2 days before the family reunion, so I picked up my phone and read it again. There was nothing I could do to stop the carefully crafted facade from collapsing. My assistant said, "Miss Sullivan," over the intercom. "Your brother Marcus is on line 1 again." He was, of course. Ever since the press release was sent to the main publications, he had been phoning constantly. I inhaled deeply before picking up the phone. "Hello, Marcus?" Without using politeness, he said. "What the hell, Sophia?" "I just got a call from Business Insider asking for a comment about my billionaire sister. Want to explain that?" I reclined in my chair and gazed at the skyline of Manhattan. "I guess you'll have to wait for the article like everyone else." "Cut the crap," he yelled at them. "All these years you've been letting us think you were barely getting by. Mom and Dad have been worried sick about you." I couldn't contain my laughter. "Worried? Is that what you call it? The constant lectures about getting a real job? The snide comments about how I'm wasting my potential? They were trying to help." "No, they were trying to control me, just like they tried to control you. And you let them." On the other end of the telephone, there was silence. The golden son who never deviated from the plan, Marcus had always been the good kid, going to business school, earning an MBA, and working for our father's investment company, was who would at last. Just tell me one thing," he responded. How long have you been hiding this?" I got up and went to the window to watch a private helicopter touch down on the helipad of a nearby building. Actually, it was one of my 3 helicopters. "Remember when I moved to that tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn when you first started with your digital art nonsense? That was," he thought to himself, "15 years ago." That's right. Everyone thought I was crazy, throwing away my finance degree to doodle on computers as Dad called it. But what none of you knew was that I'd already sold my first NFT collection for $50,000. $50,000 back then. And 6 months later I sold another for $200,000. By the time Dad was telling everyone at Christmas dinner that I was going through a phase, I had my first million. I could practically hear him mentally calculating. But you still borrowed money from Mom and Dad for rent. You drove that beat-up Panda until last year." "I never borrowed money from them, Marcus. I asked them to invest in my company. They refused, loudly and repeatedly. The Honda was a choice, not a necessity, just like this penthouse was a choice, and the private jet, and everything else I kept hidden from all of you." His voice broke as he said, "Private jet? Jesus, Sophia, how rich are you exactly?" The way our younger sister Olivia would ostentatiously pick up the check, making sure everyone knew she was supporting her struggling artist sister, brought back memories of family dinners where I was treated like a poor relative. This made me grin. The Forbes article will say $3.8 billion, but that's a conservative estimate. The real number is closer to 5. Marcus produced a sound that was in between a choke and a gasp. "Now, if you'll excuse me," I said. "I have a board meeting to attend. Oh, and Marcus, I'll see you at the family reunion. I'm thinking of making an entrance." Before he could answer, I hung up and hit the intercom. "Sarah, is everything set for the reunion?" "Yes, Miss Sullivan, the jet is fueled and ready. The car service is arranged for all family members to be picked up in Rolls-Royces. The venue has been updated to the private island as requested, and the NDAs have been prepared for all staff." "Perfect." I took up the invitation to the reunion once more. I had been playing the part they wanted me to play for 15 years. The sister who was pity-faced and patronized at every family get-together, the artsy black sheep who couldn't handle the real world, and the daughter who required continual reminders about financial responsibility. Not this time, though. My younger sister Olivia buzzed my phone with a text message that said, "OMG soft, please tell me this Forbes thing is a joke, what's going on?" I didn't respond. Olivia, who at every family get-together would talk about her 6-figure earnings. Olivia, who enjoyed reflecting on how she had survived while her older sister was still discovering herself. Once more the intercom buzzed. "Miss Sullivan, your parents are both on the line." I looked at my watch and said, "Tell them I'm in a meeting." And Sarah, call the helipad. I think I'll take the chopper to the board meeting today. My thoughts turned to the day that it all began, the day I made the decision to keep my achievement a secret from my family, as I gathered my belongings. 15 years prior. As my father's voice roared across the dinner table, digital art isn't real art, Sophia, and this NFT nonsense? It's a fad, a scam? No one's going to pay real money for pictures on a computer. Having just graduated from college at the age of 22, I sat there attempting to convey my vision to my family, the same family that had funded my Ivy League finance degree, who anticipated that I would apply it at my father's company. Actually, Dad, I just sold my first collection for enough. He interrupted me. I don't want to hear about your little hobby. Either you come work for the firm like we planned, or you're on your own. No more support, no more safety net. My mother patted my hand patronizingly as she reached across the table. Sweetie, we just want what's best for you. You need stability, a real career. I glanced at their expressions around the table. Marcus's arrogant smirk, Olivia's hardly disguised contempt, my mother's worried frown, and my father's sadness. That's when I decided what to do. I would keep the $50,000 sale, the 3 galleries interested in representing me, and the tech companies contacting me about joint ventures a secret. You're right, I murmured as I got to my feet. I need to figure this out on my own. I moved into the tiniest and least expensive studio apartment I could locate in Brooklyn 2 weeks later. My family believed I was having financial difficulties and was too arrogant to acknowledge my failure. I was actually creating an empire. It was a demanding first year. During my 18-hour workdays, I honed my artistic abilities, gained knowledge of blockchain technology, and made contacts in the crypto art community. Digital Dreams and Binary, my first significant collection, raised $1.2 million after selling out in a matter of hours. I used that money to reinvest in the company, recruiting developers, building new artist platforms, and inventing in ways that the conventional art world could not have predicted. However, whenever I went home, I dressed simply, drove my old Honda, and played the role of the struggling artist. My mother would say, "At least let me help with your rent," and my father would shake his head in dismay. "No thanks, Mom, I'm doing fine." And everything was okay with me. My net worth reached $10 million by the conclusion of the first year. In the third year, $100 million. My family, however, still saw me as Sophia, the idealist who was unable to deal with reality. As I got into my own helicopter 15 years later, I reflected on how everything had turned out to be more complicated than I had anticipated. The small lie had grown into a huge secret, and everything would alter in 2 days. When my phone buzzed once more, it was my father's message. "We need to talk now." Grinning, I hung up the phone. Waiting for the reunion would be their only option. They had been listening to my failures for 15 years, and now they were going to hear about my accomplishment. I wanted to make sure that they would never forget my discovery. At precisely 6 a.m., the Forbes piece was published. Eastern Time. As I watched the mayhem play out on my numerous screens, I was already awake and enjoying a cup of coffee at my home office. The headline read, "Digital Art Revolutionary: How Sophia Sullivan Built a Multi-Billion-Dollar Empire in Secret," and included a picture I had picked out especially for the occasion, me standing in front of my most successful NFT collection, dressed in clothing that exceeded my sister Olivia's monthly salary. In addition to disclosing my fortune, the piece listed all of my accomplishments that I had kept a secret for 15 years. There were so many notifications on my phone. The family group chat started first. Olivia asks, "Is this for real $3.8 billion? Marcus said, "I tried to warn you all yesterday." Mother. "Sophia, please answer your phone." Father. "This must be some kind of mistake. Just saw the article. Is our Sophia the Sophia Sullivan?" said Aunt Patricia. I turned off the conversation and opened my emails, which included hundreds of requests for interviews from well-known news organizations, investment opportunities, and speaking engagements. "Sophia, I think we need to discuss potential synergies between Sullivan Investments and your digital art platforms. Your father may have mentioned some concerns, but I assure you we can be quite flexible." Read an email that attracted my attention from Albert Chen, my father's business partner. I couldn't contain my laughter. I had inquired for a partnership with their firm 3 years prior. I was shown the door by Albert himself, who informed me that they did not deal in internet pictures. It buzzed on my intercom. "Miss Sullivan, your mother is in the lobby. She's quite insistent." I looked at the security feed. As she battled with the security guard, my mother, Alina Sullivan, was there, looking put together in her designer suit but with an unaccustomed wildness in her eyes. I groaned and said, "Let her up." At least one of my family members needed to be confronted. My penthouse was readily accessible by private elevator. After stepping outside, my mother paused to observe the enormous open area, the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Central Park, and the original Basquiat on the wall, which most likely cost more than their home. "Sophia," she murmured in a shaky voice. What is all this?" "This is my home, Mom. The real one, not the small apartment I keep for family visits." Her heel clicks reverberated on the marble floor as she made her way to the window. How did you?" I poured her a cup of coffee and added, "It's been 15 years since Dad said my digital art would never amount to anything." Her face was a mix of hurt and bewilderment as she turned. "But you struggled. We saw it. The tiny apartment, the old car, borrowing money for rent." "I never borrowed money," I refute this statement. "I asked you and Dad to invest in my company. That's the difference. And everything else. The apartment, the car, that was all just theater." "Theater?" she asked. "You've been lying to us for 15 years. "No, Mom, I just let you see what you wanted to see. You all were so convinced I was failing that you never bothered to look closer." She looked abruptly elderly as she slumped into one of my Italian leather chairs. "Does anyone else in the family?" "No one." "Well, Marcus found out yesterday when the press release went out. I suppose he tried to warn you." She gave a feeble nod. "He called, but your father was sure it was a mistake. Some other Sophia Sullivan." I went to get a file from my desk. "Here's something that might interest you. The investment opportunity I tried to present to Dad 3 years ago. If he had invested the $1 million I asked for, his share would be worth roughly $100 million today." She accepted the file with trembling hands. He said you wanted a handout, that you were too proud to admit your art wasn't working out. And you believed him, just like you believed him about my struggling artist's life. Tell me, Mom, in 15 years, did any of you ever actually come to one of my shows, check out my work, even Google my name?" She was unable to look me in the eye. "That's what I thought." I approached the window and gazed down at the city that I now controlled in part. The annual family reunion is in 2 days. I've made some changes to the arrangements. Changes? I bought out the entire resort where it was supposed to be held. Too public. Instead, everyone will be picked up by my private cars and taken to my jet. We'll be having the reunion on my island. Your island? In the Caribbean? I bought it last year when I closed my first billion-dollar deal. I looked over at her. And Mom, this time I won't be the one sitting quietly while everyone talks about their successes. This time I have some things to say. She straightened her skirt with trembling hands and got to her feet. Your father, when he sees all this, he'll finally have to admit that his little girl playing with computer pictures built something bigger than his entire family legacy. I grinned. And that's just the beginning. Before she could enter, I added one final item after I escorted her to the elevator. "Oh, and Mom, that Bentley you've been dreaming about, but Dad says it's too expensive. I bought 3 last month, just because I could." She was horrified as the elevator doors closed. I contacted my assistant as soon as she left. "Sarah, is everything ready for the reunion?" "Yes, Miss Sullivan. The island staff is prepared. The documentation packages have been assembled for each family member, showing exactly when they dismissed your investment opportunities and what those shares would be worth today. And the video presentation of your success timeline is ready." Perfect. Finally, I took up my phone and sent a single message in response to the family group chat. "Looking forward to seeing everyone at the reunion. Dress appropriately for a private island. Transportation will be provided." I then checked the market on my laptop. The Forbes piece caused the stock of my company to rise. Before breakfast, my net worth increased by another $1 billion. I imagined my father, who was likely sitting in his office at the moment, trying to comprehend how his failing daughter had subtly become one of the wealthiest people in the nation. I also thought about my sister Olivia, who enjoyed boasting about her 6-figure salary and Hampton's vacation home, and how I could buy her a lifetime with the interest I earned every day. It was going to be an interesting reunion. Really fascinating, in fact. My father had left a message on my phone, which buzzed once more. "We need to meet before the reunion. Family matters should be discussed privately." I replied, "Everything will be discussed at the reunion, Dad. After all, isn't that what family reunions are for? Sharing our successes." I then gave Sarah another call. "Contact the design team. I want the island's helipad repainted before the reunion, and make sure my name is visible from the air when they land." "Already done, Miss Sullivan. Anything else?" I considered 15 years of rudeness, sympathy, and being viewed as the family's failure. Yes. Make sure the Forbes article is framed and hanging in every room of the island resort. I want it to be the first thing they see, no matter where they turn. I saw my reflection in the window as I hung up, prosperous, strong, and at last prepared to show my family who I had grown into while they were busy questioning me. The reunion countdown had started. The Sullivan family reunion day came bright and clear. As I stood on my private airfield's tarmac, I saw 3 Rolls-Royces pull up in formation. My folks were here. The doors opened and the cars came to a stop. Marcus, Olivia, and other aunts, uncles, and cousins followed, all sporting faces ranging from shock to barely disguised hostility. My mother, still appearing unsettled from our meeting 2 days ago, and my father, his normally imposing presence seemingly weakened. And my shining private airplane was sitting there, front and center, with the magnificent letters Sullivan Digital Empire inscribed on its side. I said, "Welcome everyone," sounding clear over the tarmac. "I trust the ride was comfortable?" "Safia," my dad said, attempting to sound more authoritative. "This is unnecessary. We could have had a perfectly good reunion at the resort." I grinned. "The resort was too public, Dad. Besides, I think it's time for some real family bonding. On my island." "Your island," Olivia whispered, holding her high-end purse tightly. "Of course, you have an island." To put it mildly, the flight was fascinating. My family members' gazes raced around the luxury cabin as they settled down, taking in the rare artwork, the solid gold fittings, and the vintage champagne supplied by the spotlessly trained crew. Aunt Patricia looked at the painting on a cabin wall and murmured, Is that a real Picasso?" "Yes," I said nonchalantly. "I bought it last year, along with a few others." My dad cleared his throat. "Sophia, perhaps we should discuss." "We'll discuss everything when we land, Dad. For now, enjoy the flight. The champagne is particularly good." I took a deep breath. "Costs more than your company's quarterly profits." He winced. We started our descent 2 hours later. My private island, a 300-acre tropical paradise with a cutting-edge resort complex at its heart, was visible through the windows. There it was, my name in letters big enough to be seen from space. Sullivan, visible from the air as I had intended. Olivia gasped as we touched down. Millions upon millions of dollars worth of digital art projected onto enormous screens ringed the helipad, each display showcasing my most popular NFT collections and conspicuously displaying their sale prices. As we disembarked, I said, "Welcome to Sullivan Island. My own little piece of paradise." "Little," Marcus stutteringly said. The resort complex, a masterwork of contemporary design that merged perfectly with the beauty of nature, stretched out in front of us. I went on, "Everyone's rooms have been assigned. You'll find some reading material waiting for you. I suggest you review it before dinner." Each family member's reading selection was thoughtfully chosen. For my dad, records of all my investment opportunities that he turned down, including with the most recent estimates. For Olivia, a comparison between my daily interest earnings and her yearly pay. For Marcus, specifics on how his company's refusal to collaborate with my business cost them millions of dollars. After letting them get settled and process the information for an hour, I called them into the main dining area. The suite, which had floor-to-ceiling windows facing the ocean, was a design marvel. The room was dominated by a huge table, each place setting likely worth more than the cars of most people. And that Forbes article, exquisitely framed, on each wall. Shell-shocked, my family slowly filed in. Even their pricey clothing seemed somewhat insufficient in these conditions, even though they had changed for supper. "Please sit," I said before pointing to the table. "We have a lot to discuss." As soon as everyone was seated, my father said, "Sophia, I think I speak for everyone when I say we're surprised." "Surprised?" I said with a quiet laugh. "That's an interesting word choice. Not angry that I deceived you, not hurt that I hid my success, just surprised?" "We didn't know," my mom said. I told her, "You didn't want to know," instead. "Every time I tried to tell you about my work, you changed the subject. Every time I offered investment opportunities, you dismissed them. You were so convinced I was failing that you couldn't see my success, even when it was right in front of you." Olivia cut in. "But the apartment, the old car, all those times you let me pay for dinner. Because you thought I couldn't afford it," I concluded for her. "Did you enjoy that, Olivia? Playing the successful sister, making sure everyone knew you were helping out poor struggling Sophia?" She was graceful enough to appear embarrassed. After saying, "Let me show you something," I pressed a button. Screens dropped from the ceiling, showing a history of my achievements over the years, along with their contemptuous remarks. 2008, Digital art isn't real art, Dad. My first collection sells for $50,000. 2010? When are you going to get a real job, Mom? Company valuation hits $10 million. 2015. At least I can afford to help my sister out, Olivia. Net worth passes $500 million. 2020. We don't invest in internet pictures, Dad's firm. Company valuation reaches $1 billion. Every doubt, every dismissal, every condescending comment, I gently said, I remembered them all. And with each one, I built something bigger. My father's voice broke as he asked, why? Why hide it? Because you needed to learn something. All of you did. Success doesn't look just one way. Innovation doesn't follow your predetermined path. And sometimes, the child you wrote off as a failure might just be the one who succeeds beyond your wildest dreams. I got up and moved toward the window. Do you know what the hardest part was? Not the secrecy, not pretending to struggle. It was watching you all celebrate mediocrity while dismissing true innovation. Mediocrity? Snarled Marcus. Yes, mediocrity. You followed Dad's safe path, Marcus. Got the job he wanted you to get, made the safe investments. And you, I said to Olivia, you bragged about your six-figure salary while I was making that much in minutes. That's enough, said my dad. You've made your point. We were wrong. Is that what you want to hear? No, Dad. What I want is for you to understand, I really understand. This, I pointed to the wealth around us, isn't about money. It's about vision. The vision you couldn't see because you were too busy clinging to the past. I hit another button, and fresh visuals popped up on the screens. My most recent endeavor, a groundbreaking platform that would revolutionize the production, purchase, and sale of digital art. When I said, this launches next month, conservative estimates put its value at $10 billion. I'm showing you this because for once, I want you to see what I'm building before it happens. No more dismissing it, no more doubting. As they processed the ramifications, the room became quiet. My mother finally said something. We're proud of you, Sophia. We should have been proud all along. Thank you, Mom. But I didn't do this for your pride. I did it because it was my dream, my vision. And now, I grinned, it's my empire. Marcus said, so what happens now? Now we have dinner, as a family. But this time, we'll do it my way. No more pretending, no more hiding. And tomorrow, we'll tour the island, and I'll show you exactly what your daughter, sister, and niece has built while you weren't paying attention. I held up my glass. To the truth, finally. They were rather dizzy when they lifted their glasses. Fine wine, delicious cuisine, and slowly thawing chats filled the remainder of the evening. My family was starting to notice me. Truly see me. First time in 15 years. That evening, I remained in the dining room and gazed out at the moonlit ocean as others went to their apartments. Sarah, my helper, showed up beside me. With a whisper she questioned, was it worth it? The big reveal? I considered the expressions on their faces. The astonishment, the insight, the slow comprehension. Yes, I said. But not for what I had anticipated. It was about being able to be wholly myself at last, not about proving them incorrect. And tomorrow, laughed I, tomorrow we show them the future. Their safe, predictable world of traditional investments and conventional success is over. It's time for them to understand that the daughter they wrote off as a dreamer wasn't just dreaming. She was building a new world while they weren't looking. Later that evening, I discovered a note written by my father that had been hidden behind my door. I was wrong. Not just about the business, but about everything. You didn't just succeed, you revolutionized an entire industry. I'm sorry I couldn't see it sooner. Dad? As a reminder of my beginnings and progress, I framed the note and placed it next to my first NFT sale receipt for $50,000. My family's attitudes abruptly shifted the following morning as I observed them getting together for breakfast. I came to a significant realization. Sometimes proving yourself correct is just as important to success as proving others incorrect. The quiet awareness that you created something remarkable while everyone else was busy doubting you can often be the sweetest victory, rather than the revelation of accomplishment. The news alert that buzzed on my phone read, Sullivan Digital Empire announces revolutionary new platform. The time had come for my family to witness the unfolding of the future in real time. No more pretending or concealing. My mom said I shouldn't come for Christmas because my step-grandparents hated me and would cut their inheritance if we stayed in touch. My stepdad's parents, who despised me, would be at Christmas, so my mom told me I wasn't welcome. I severed all contact with them and withdrew their financial support, but a few months later they were at my house. Long pauses at the beginning of phone calls have always annoyed me since they seldom contain pleasant news. My mother's hesitancy on the other end of the telephone, 3 days before Christmas, told me everything I needed to know before she even said anything. Erica, honey, I think it would be better if you didn't come home for Christmas this year. I almost dropped my mug of coffee. Mom, what are you talking about? It's just, well, Richard's parents are coming and they don't want to see you, and they've made it quite clear. In an attempt to comprehend what I was hearing, I collapsed onto my couch. My stepdad, Richard, had been married to my mother since I was 10 years old, and although his parents had never been fond of me, this was different. My mother chose them over me in this situation. I tried to maintain my composure as I said, since Dad passed away, we've always celebrated Christmas together. It's our custom. I know, honey, but what? You're seriously picking other people over your own daughter? No matter what reason she offered, the silence that ensued was terrible. Her voice was strained when she did speak. Erica, they've threatened to cut Richard out of their will if they find out we're still in contact with you. They told us they won't leave him an inheritance and will stop talking to us altogether. I was going to yell. So this is about money? Quickly? No, it's not just that, she said. I've told them that we haven't been in touch with you for years. I need you to go along with this. It's just this once. There was no comedy in my laughter. You want me to pretend I don't exist in your life? That's your solution? Richard's parents are difficult people, Erica. They're spiteful and stubborn. We need to make sure they believe no one in the family talks to you anymore. You need to understand. I ended the call. I was no longer able to listen. You would have to go back more than 20 years to comprehend why Richard's parents detested me so much. When I was 4 years old, my real dad passed away in a vehicle accident. Before she met Richard, a widower with a daughter named Hannah who is 9 years old, it was just Mom and me against the world for 6 years. Richard and Hannah moved into our home after they were married. At first, everything was okay. I got along well enough with Hannah. At times, we quarreled like sisters, hurling pillows at one another and squabbling over who got the remote control, all typical child behavior. However, Richard's parents detested me from the beginning. They referred to me as impolite and unruly. They would comment, "It's obvious she grew up without a father," as if I weren't even there. They would bring Hannah gifts when they came to visit, but nothing for me. They would never speak to me, but they would chat through and around me. When I was 14, the worst of it occurred. Hannah and I were left with Richard's parents while Mom and Richard went on vacation. Normally, Mom's sister, Aunt Sarah, would host us, but she was occupied at the moment. Despite their reluctance, Richard's parents decided to have us, especially me. Hannah and I argued over the laptop after spending a week together locked up. Tensions were high and we were both really bored. I gave her a gentle shove during the fight, but she lost her equilibrium, fell awkwardly, and fractured her arm. Hannah let out a scream that had my blood run down my spine. Her grandparents rushed over. Her grandma called Richard in a fit of hysteria while her grandfather took her to the hospital. She screamed into the phone, "You have to come home now." Erica beat Hannah badly and broke her arm. She needs to be in a psychiatric clinic, she's completely out of control. Everything changed after that call. They stole my phone, locked me in a bedroom, and only unlocked the door to let food in. They referred to me as a rabid animal, and threatened to put me in juvenile jail. 3 days after taking a short trip, Mom and Richard returned home. In a fit of rage, Richard claimed he couldn't trust himself around me. I was sent to spend 2 months with Aunt Sarah. Richard hardly talked to me when I got home. Ironically, the incident strengthened our bond, and Hannah and I swiftly reconciled. I never had anger management difficulties, so my parents had me go to therapy. After that, the atmosphere at home was oppressive. It was like fleeing prison when I turned 18 and moved to a different place for college. I only communicated with Mom and Hannah when I was in college. I worked really hard to succeed while studying management and administration. My buddy Olivia and I were able to secure internships at her father's restaurant company during our junior year. Everyone was taken aback by the development plan I created. Profits increased in a matter of months when it did work. Olivia's father gave me a job opportunity when I graduated. Olivia wanted me to be her executive director when he turned over the restaurant management business to her. I would effectively be her right-hand lady, in charge of modernization and business development. I changed that chain of restaurants with Olivia. We built a mobile app, established food delivery services, and set up areas where patrons could use laptops to place food orders. In order to demonstrate how hygienic and effective the kitchens were, we set up live stream cameras in each restaurant, created designated areas for selfies, and began culinary lessons. Young folks began to pour in. We drew in a ton of new clients while retaining the old ones. When business took off, I was suddenly paid more than I could have ever imagined. I had savings for the first time in my life. At that point, Mom called to discuss Richard's work-related issues. She said that he had been fired. We're struggling to make the mortgage payments. Richard then picked up the phone. Erica, I'm sorry for everything. You're our only hope right now. I thus consented to assist. I sent them money each month to cover their mortgage. I continued to pay even after Richard eventually secured part-time employment. I didn't find it difficult, and they had become accustomed to the assistance. I believed I was purchasing a stronger bond with them. I was mistaken. I spent what seemed like hours sitting on my couch, staring at my phone after that terrible chat with Mom. My mind was jumbled. I needed someone who would listen to me. I rang Hannah's phone. Hey sis, what's up? Hannah's upbeat tone was a stark contrast to my own emotions. Mom just called, I answered, a little trembling in my voice. She told me not to come home for Christmas because your grandparents will be there. Your grandparents threatened to cut Richard out of their will if they found out they still talk to me. Apparently, she's been telling them for years that they don't have any contact with me. Hannah seldom ever used profanity. That, she said. What the hell is wrong with them? She wants me to play along, I said. Pretend I'm not part of the family anymore, so your grandparents will leave the money someday. Hannah answered, well, the hell with it, with firmness. If you're not welcome there, then I'm not coming either. If they're choosing money over you, then they can do Christmas without both of us. My eyes filled with tears. Hannah was the one member of my family who always had my back, even after everything we had been through. I felt a little better once I hung up with Hannah. I gave some friends I knew had no family Christmas plans a call. By the end of the evening, Hannah and 5 of my friends and I had planned an unplanned orphan Christmas at my flat. Hannah showed in the day before Christmas with a bag full of decorations and a little suitcase. She exclaimed, I raided the dollar store, when she threw tinsel and glittery decorations on my coffee table. Your place needs some Christmas spirit. We drank wine, caught up, and decorated my apartment that evening. Neither of us brought up Richard, Mom, or the inheritance issue. For a few hours, nothing had changed. The formal, stressful events we had experienced as children at home were not at all like Christmas Day. Around noon, my pals showed up with food, beverages, or games. We probably drank more than we should have, ate too much, and laughed too loudly. It was authentic, yet it wasn't conventional. Even Hannah acknowledged at the conclusion of the evening that it was the finest Christmas she had experienced in a long time. Naturally, though, reality has a way of getting in the way. Before going to bed, I was browsing Instagram when I came upon a post from Mom. In their living room, she was grinning beside Richard's parents, who were all dressed in similar Christmas sweaters. It said, so blessed to spend this special day with family. Family. The word made my stomach turn like a dagger. I was no longer family. It was inconvenient to conceal the truth about me. That night, I was unable to sleep. Every monthly mortgage payment I'd been making and the Instagram post kept playing back in my head. I believed I was mending old wounds and constructing bridges each time I sent that money. I now saw that I had only been purchasing the false sense of family. The following morning, I decided. I canceled the automatic transfer to my parents' mortgage account by using my banking app. I was tired of being exploited, even if it was small. It was 2 weeks later. Thankful for the post-holiday influx of new restaurant patrons who had made New Year's resolves to try new places, I poured myself into my work. I welcomed the diversion as Olivia and I worked on plans to open a new site. Then Mom called. A part of me wanted to hear what she had to say, but I almost didn't respond. She said, Erica, there's a problem with the mortgage payment, without even extending a greeting. Did you forget to send it? I didn't forget, I answered, maintaining a steady tone. I canceled it. Silence fell for a beat. What do you mean you canceled it? I mean I'm not paying your mortgage anymore. She said in a panic, but we're counting on that money. The payment is due today. You should have thought about that before you betrayed me for your in-laws' money, I replied. You chose them over me. Now you can ask them to pay your mortgage. This is about Christmas, Erica. You're being childish. We explained why. You explained that money is more important to you than I am. I am message received. Then her voice shifted from one of terror to one of accusation. I know what you did. You convinced Hannah not to come for Christmas. You turned her against us. What I didn't do, you know? What I had to tell Richard's parents? That she was seriously ill? I had to lie and make up a whole story because of you. What I was hearing was unbelievable. You've gone mad because of this inheritance thing. Normal people don't invent illnesses for their children, Mom. They don't disown them for money. You have no idea what you're talking about, she said. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me lately, Mom, besides kick me out of Christmas and lie about my existence? She ended the call. The months that followed were calm. I didn't get in touch, and Mom didn't call again. Hannah stayed in contact and went to visit whenever she could. She had turned into the only family member who had not betrayed me and my only true link to my former existence. I threw myself into new initiatives and concentrated on my work. Olivia and I opened a new restaurant across town as part of our restaurant brand expansion. It was a good business. Life was steady. However, when I thought about my family, I still felt empty. Then Hannah called one evening in late April. Hey, I'm going to come visit you tomorrow. Is that okay? Her voice seemed strange, but I didn't press the issue. When Hannah felt like it, she had always been straightforward. My doorbell rang shortly after noon the following day. When I opened it, Mom and Richard were standing there in addition to Hannah. I took a step back and nearly slammed the door, asking myself, what the hell? Hannah raised her hands. Hear them out, Erica, please. It was clear from their faces, Hannah's begging, Richard's uneasiness, and Mom's anxiety, that this would not be a quick chat. I suppose they were strangers by now because they filed into my living room like strangers. Mom held her handbag close to her chest. Awkwardly, Richard stood beside the window. Hannah cleared her throat. So, I think Mom and Dad have something they want to say. Mom inhaled deeply. Erica, we came to apologize. What I did at Christmas was wrong. She appeared to think that was sufficient, but I waited for more. That's it? I inquired at last. We're missing you, Richard continued. The house isn't the same without you. I didn't care that my voice was rising. The house I wasn't welcome in at Christmas? The house where you pretend I don't exist whenever your parents visit? You're going to have to do better than we miss you. Hannah put her hand on my arm. Let him finish, Erica. Mom gave a clumsy smile. You're right to be angry. We betrayed you. I betrayed you. I put money ahead of my own daughter, and I've been sick about it ever since. Your financial assistance is no longer required, Richard stated. I found a new job, better than the old one. We're managing the mortgage payments just fine. That's not why we're here. I said. Then why are you here? Because we're family, her voice cracked. And we almost threw that away. For what? For my in-laws' approval? For money we might get someday? It was wrong. I hesitated because of something about her genuineness. I had been prepared for manipulations, guilt trips, and justifications. I wasn't expecting real regret. I asked Richard, what about your parents? They still planning to write you out of the will if they find out we talk? Richard's gaze shifted to his hands. I called them after you stopped sending money. Told them I wasn't going to pretend anymore, that you're my daughter too. They flew off the handle, threatened to disown me, just like they said they would. We had a huge fight. So what changed? I did, said Hannah. I called Grandma and Grandpa and told them I knew everything, that I fully supported you and Dad, and if they couldn't accept you as part of our family, then they'd lose me too. Mom gave a nod. They called back 3 days later. Said they'd calmed down and were willing to accept things. They're not ready to lose Hannah. I was at a loss for words. I wanted my family back, therefore I wanted to forgive them. Another part recalled how effortlessly they'd ignored me when it suited them. I was honest when I said, I don't know if I can trust you again. You shut me out when it suited you. What happens next time they threaten to cut you off? Mom said. There won't be a next time. We've drawn a line. You're our daughter, and that's non-negotiable. I glanced at Mom, whose eyes were full of tears, then at Richard, who appeared more sincere than I'd seen him in years, and finally at Hannah, who gave me a supportive nod. I said, I'm not saying everything's fine now, with caution. It's going to take time, but I'm willing to try. Mom sobbed and came running to give me a hug. I didn't want to fully surrender, so I stayed rigid in her arms. When Mom eventually let me go, Richard remarked, We've been looking into family therapy, all 4 of us, to work through the old stuff, not just this recent mess. Therapy? My astonishment was evident. When I was a teenager, Richard had always laughed at my forced anger management classes. Hannah said, it was Dad's idea, with a proud expression on her face. He says we all have baggage we need to unpack. Richard said, I should have defended you years ago. After the accident with Hannah's arm, I knew it wasn't your fault, but I let my parents dictate how I treated you. That wasn't right. I reflected on the years I had spent trying to gain his approval, the therapy sessions in which counselors attempted to fix me when I wasn't damaged, and the fact that I had continued to provide for them financially in the hopes that they would still love me. Hours of agonizing but important discourse lasted that evening. We discussed the Christmas betrayal that had been the final straw, the past scars I believed had healed but obviously hadn't, and what it would take to regain trust. We had a plan by the time they departed, which included regular dinners for the four of us, no in-laws allowed, weekly family therapy sessions beginning the following month, and explicit rules about what was and wasn't appropriate moving forward. It was a start, but it wasn't forgiveness yet. Hannah remained after they left. With the familiarity of a sister who knew she was welcome, she fell into my couch. "You okay?" she inquired. "I don't know," was my honest response. Part of me wants to believe them. Another part is waiting for the other shoe to drop. She pulled at a loose thread on my throw cushion and said, "I understand that. For what it's worth, I think they mean it this time. You should have seen Mom after Christmas. She was a mess, kept saying she'd made a horrible mistake." "Did they ask you to arrange this?" Hannah gave a headshake. "It was my idea. I was tired of being the go-between, of hearing them talk about how much they missed you while knowing they'd hurt you so badly." I reclined, suddenly worn out. "I'm not sure family therapy is going to fix everything." "Probably not," added Hannah. "But it's a step. And I'll be there too, making sure they don't backslide." Regardless of blood, I grinned at my sister, my true sister. "When did you get so wise?" "Learned from the best," she replied, putting her hand on my shoulder. "You never gave up on me, even when we were kids and I was a total brat. Now it's my turn to not give up on this family." After Hannah departed that evening, I sat by myself in my apartment contemplating forgiveness, second chances, and family, both the one you choose and the one you are born into. I wasn't sure if I was prepared to give my parents back complete control. Once lost, trust is difficult to rebuild. But perhaps, just perhaps, we could use the fragments of what had been destroyed to create something new. As you can anticipate, the first family therapy session was quite uncomfortable. We were asked to gather in a circle and discuss our expectations with Dr. Levine, a kind-eyed, no-nonsense woman in her 50s. Mom wiped at her eyes and whispered, "I just want my family back." "I want to understand why I was so easily disposable," I replied. Richard stirred uneasily. "I want to be a better father to both my daughters." "Always the mediator," Hannah declared. "I want us to be honest with each other. No more secrets or lies." Dr. Levine gave a nod. "Those are all valid desires. This won't be easy, but acknowledging what you want is a good start." We had frequent meetings throughout the ensuing weeks. We continued to show up even though the sessions occasionally turned into arguments or tears. We slowly and carefully worked through years of miscommunications, grudges, and anxieties. We discussed how Richard's parents had used their inheritance as a weapon to dominate the family, why I had felt obligated to provide for them despite everything that had transpired, and the Christmas treachery that had finally crushed me. We began repairing our relationship in little steps outside of treatment. Mom used to call just to talk. Richard believed I might find the restaurant management articles he provided me interesting. Hannah and I continued to have a closer sisterly closeness than before. After 2 months of treatment, Richard's disclosure about his own upbringing was a turning point. "My parents always used money to control me," he recalled as a schoolboy. "If I didn't behave exactly as they wanted, they'd threaten to cut me off. When I wanted to marry my first wife, they threatened to disinherit me because they didn't approve of her. I stood my ground then, but after she died, I guess I didn't have the fight left in me, so when they started treating Erica the same way." He looked at me with sincere regret as he confessed, "I fell back into old patterns." At Dr. Levine's prompting, "I'm so sorry, Erica. I failed you." That day, something changed within me. For the first time, I saw Richard as someone who had been controlled his entire life, just like I had been, rather than as the stepfather who had deceived me. Better was due to both of us. By the 3rd month of therapy, I informed him, we were prepared to put our new family dynamics to the test in the real world. Mom asked me to join them for dinner in the house where I grew up. It had been before Christmas when I last visited. Anxiety made my stomach turn as I pulled into the driveway. What if Richard's parents appeared out of the blue? What if this whole thing was a sophisticated ruse? However, the scent of my favorite dish, Mom's lasagna, greeted me as soon as I entered, and the dining room was adorned with pictures. Pictures of Hannah and I together, pictures of me graduating from college, and pictures of the 4 of us in better times. Mom said, "We put these back up," as she followed my eyes. "They belong here, you belong here." It seemed like progress, even if there were still awkward pauses and moments when old tensions threatened to reappear during dinner. Richard pulled me aside after supper. After saying, "I need to show you something," he ushered me into his office. He had a legal paper on his desk. I said, "What's this?" "I've been working with a lawyer to ensure that whatever happens with my parents' inheritance won't affect what I leave to you and Hannah. You'll both be treated equally in my will, no matter what." I was dumbfounded when I looked at him. "It's not about the money," he rapidly explained. "It's about making sure you know that you are my daughter, Erica, not by blood but by choice. And nothing, not my parents, not their money, will ever change that again." I cried then, even though I didn't weep much. That night, I contacted Hannah on the way home. I informed her, "You won't believe what just happened," as I described the events of the night. "I believe it," she declared. "Dad's been working on that thing for weeks. He wanted it to be perfect for you." I asked out loud, "When did everything change so much?" After Hannah said, "When you stood up for yourself. You showed them they couldn't have it both ways. They couldn't treat you like garbage and still expect your financial support. It made them realize what they were losing." She was correct. I had forced them to make a decision by emotionally and financially cutting them off. Surprisingly, they had picked me. Dr. Levine requested us to discuss our progress at the following treatment session. "I've learned that I can't control how others treat me, but I can control how I respond," I replied. "I don't have to keep paying, literally or figuratively, for people to love me. I've learned that I married a strong woman," Richard stated, addressing his mother, "who raised an even stronger daughter, and that standing up to my parents was long overdue." "I've learned that family isn't just about blood or obligation," Mom said. "It's a choice we make every day." Hannah grinned. "I've learned that my sister is a badass who doesn't take crap from anyone anymore." That made us all laugh. We all gathered to dinner at a brand new restaurant that my employer had opened 6 months after Christmas that nearly killed our family. I came to the crucial realization that we were no longer the same family as previously as we sat around the table laughing and telling stories. The foundation of the family had been fear, duty, and unspoken grudges. It wasn't flawless. We still experienced horrible days. Even though Richard's parents had been relatively silent since our reunion, they were still a complex part of our lives. Sometimes old hurts come back. However, we were determined to resolve it together, and that was what made all the difference, I was starting to think. My brother stalked my girlfriend, but my family defended him. We were threatened, so we left, started over, and cut off all contact. As soon as my girlfriend Sophia, 25, walked in, Ethan began acting aggressively, making her incredibly uncomfortable with absolutely out-of-character conduct. He virtually pushed our mother aside just to be the first to hug Sophia, and he held her so tightly that she had to physically pull away. Throughout dinner, he kept finding excuses to touch her hand or shoulder, making odd inside jokes despite the fact that they'd only recently met, and actually pushing past me many times to sit next to her, until he crossed the line by trying to feed her with his fork while staring attentively. Sophia was obviously uneasy, but she stayed courteous because it was our first family gathering and she wanted to make a good impression. Ethan spent the entire evening reciting embarrassing anecdotes about my youth, twisting them to make me look like a miserable fool. He even told a completely false story about how he had to save my high school girlfriend from my claimed emotional abuse, which never occurred. Sophia knew these stories weren't genuine since I'd already told her about my adolescence, but my parents just nodded along as if Ethan was spouting biblical truth. After dinner, things worsened. Sophia offered to help clean up, hoping to be helpful. I was helping my father move some boxes in the garage when I remembered I hadn't seen Sophia in a while. I found her in the kitchen, with Ethan actually blocking her departure. He had trapped her at the sink and told her she deserved someone more exciting than his boring, unstable older brother. He was standing far too close, one hand on the counter next to her hip. Sophia ordered him to back off twice before I came inside. When she spotted me, she was relieved and came to stand next to me. Ethan just laughed dismissively, as if everything was one big joke, but Sophia was visibly shivering. My fiancée Sophia and I had been dating for 8 months, and everything was going great until Ethan started to wreck our lives with his compulsive behavior. I suppose I should explain our family dynamic so that this makes sense. Ethan and I were raised in a tiny Minnesota town by upper-middle-class parents. Our parents both work in real estate and make good money, but they've always prioritized appearances over genuine family relationships. Ethan was born when I was 3 years old, and he has always been the focal point of our parents' lives. He could do no wrong, but everything was always my fault. Growing up, Ethan exhibited some pretty alarming conduct, which my parents completely disregarded. When he was 6, he purposefully smashed my game console because I refused to let him play whenever he wanted. Instead of penalizing him, my parents got him his own and told me I needed to learn to share more effectively. At 12, he murdered my pet hamster by giving it chocolate, knowing it was deadly, but my parents stated it was a mistake and that I shouldn't have a pet if I couldn't properly care for it. In high school, he created allegations that I cheated on my then girlfriend, resulting in our split. My parents claimed he was merely protecting her. That tendency persisted into maturity. Ethan still lives at home with our parents, works at my father's real estate firm, and generally does whatever he wants. He has ruined every relationship I have tried to form. With my previous girlfriend, he convinced her family that I had a gambling problem, which was absolutely false. Before that, he told another woman that I had cheated on all of my ex-partners, which was also false. My parents would either justify his acts or accuse me of being overly dramatic. When I met Sophia, I resolved to do things differently. I kept our relationship absolutely quiet from my family for the first 3 months to protect her from Ethan's regular techniques. Sophia is truly the best thing that has happened to me. She is an intelligent and caring pediatric nurse at our local hospital. We met in the hospital cafe while I was visiting a coworker who had recently undergone surgery. She was on her lunch break, and we started talking about how bad the hospital coffee was. After a few more coffee discussions, we began dating, and everything seemed great. Sophia knows everything about my family history because I wanted her to be prepared. In fact, she was the one who pushed me to try to introduce her, claiming that things might be different now that we were all adults. One of my favorite things about her is that she constantly looks for the best in people. I eventually agreed to introduce Sophia to my family at a dinner party last month, and then everything started to fall apart. The main difficulty began several days after the dinner. Sophia began to receive weird phone calls and messages from numbers she did not know. At first, she responded with heavy breathing or immediate hang-ups. Then they started leaving more weird voicemails, labeling her stuck up and cold for turning down a better option. Some of the messages included exact data about her work schedule and what she wore that day, proving someone was watching her. Sophia didn't realize it at first, but a couple voices reminded me of Ethan's high school classmates. This gang of boys still goes out with him and basically follows his orders because his parents give him money to spend. When Sophia blocked those numbers, they simply began phoning from new ones. Then Ethan's pals began showing up at the hospital, appearing to be visitors but actually lingering around the pediatric wing, where Sophia works. They would look at her for hours, making loud comments that she could hear. Last week, one of them followed her to her car after she worked the night shift. She was so horrified that she contacted me crying from inside her car, afraid to drive home in case they were monitoring her. I had to come pick her up and drive her car back, while my friend followed us in his car to ensure we weren't being pursued. Sophia has begun experiencing panic attacks before her shifts, and her coworkers have realized something is plainly wrong. Yesterday, I finally got enough evidence to approach Ethan. I had voicemail recordings, messaging screenshots, and hospital security camera footage that showed his friend stalking Sophia. I visited our parents' house, where Ethan still resides, and showed him everything. He just sat there, smugly smiling, as I spoke. Then he looked me directly in the eyes and stated he had no idea what I was talking about. But maybe if Sophia wasn't such a spoiled brat, no one would feel the need to teach her a lesson. Something inside of me snapped when he said that, and I hit him in the face. Ethan immediately began screaming as if I had tried to kill him, despite the fact that it was only a little nosebleed. Our parents rushed in, and of course, they lost it. At me, not him. They didn't even look at the evidence I tried to provide to them. My mother became enraged over her poor baby boy being attacked, while my father yelled that I had always been jealous of Ethan and needed professional help for my anger issues. When I tried to explain the harassment, Mom said Sophia was probably flirting with Ethan at dinner and is now playing the victim because she was caught. Dad urged me to leave his house and not return until I had apologized to Ethan and gotten my head straight. I am writing from Sophia's flat, where I have been staying since last night. She finally fell asleep in the other room after crying for hours, frightened of going to work tomorrow. Sophia's supervisor has been understanding thus far, but she is concerned that if the problem escalates, she may lose her job. She enjoys working with children in pediatrics and should not be forced to give it up because of my insane brother. I really don't know what to do anymore. Every time I think Ethan cannot go any lower, he proves me wrong. Our parents are absolutely encouraging his actions and have been gaslighting both me and Sophia about what is happening. The police will not take action unless there is more direct evidence linking Ethan to the harassment. Sophia is terrified, her job is in jeopardy, and my family treats us as if we are the problem. Has anyone ever dealt with something like this? How do I keep Sophia safe while dealing with such a toxic family? Should I do more to capture everything that happens? Any advice would be highly appreciated. I'm at my wit's end. Update 1. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who responded to my first post. Reading all of your answers helped me realize how serious the problem is. Sophia and I attempted to follow a lot of the advice many of you gave about documenting everything and taking legal action. Unfortunately, things have become worse over the last 2 weeks, and I need to rant about it. We followed the instructions and went to the police. Sophia and I spent hours gathering proof, including screenshots of all the threatening messages, voicemail recordings, and hospital security footage that showed Ethan's buddies lurking. We also received written testimonies from 3 of Sophia's coworkers who witnessed the stalking conduct. The officer we initially spoke with was concerned, particularly regarding workplace harassment, but things quickly became difficult. It comes out that Ryan, Ethan's best buddy and one of the main perpetrators of the abuse, is the son of a local police sergeant. When we stated Ryan's name, the officer's tone completely altered. He began by stating that without concrete proof that Ethan was coordinating everything, there was little they could do. He further indicated that Sophia was misinterpreting friendly attention from people who were just hanging around the hospital for legitimate reasons. He even had the arrogance to wonder if Sophia had somehow piqued their interest. We wanted to speak with another officer, preferably a female, but they refused. Finally, they stated they'd send a warning to everybody we could identify from the tape, but that was all they could do in the absence of specific evidence of actual threats. It felt like an absolute waste of time. My parents' reaction was far worse than I anticipated. The day after we went to the police, Ethan arrived at their house with a black eye, claiming I had struck him again. I hadn't seen him since the night I hit him 2 weeks before, but my parents quickly believed him. My mother called, sobbing about how I'd lost control, and was trying to destroy Ethan's life. She said going to the police demonstrated I was purposefully attempting to damage his future over a stupid misunderstanding. Then my father called. He was infuriated. He threatened to cut me off financially, which would have been problematic if I still relied on them. Fortunately, I have a steady career in software development and my own apartment. He also threatened to fire me from the family real estate company, conveniently forgetting that I never worked there. That is Ethan's job. It truly demonstrates that they don't regard me as my own person, but rather as an accessory to Ethan's life. The true calamity occurred this past weekend. My mother repeatedly called and texted, saying they wanted to fix things as a family. She assured that Ethan was sorry for everything and wanted to apologize to both me and Sophia. She stated that they had discussed limits with him, and he was aware that his behavior was wrong. After discussing it with Sophia, we decided to give them the opportunity to make things right. That was an enormous error. We went to my parents' house expecting a family dinner to reconcile things. I sensed there was something odd from the moment we went in. The house was full with my parents, Ethan, our aunt and uncle, who usually support Ethan, and, worst of all, Ryan and 2 of the guys who had been pursuing Sophia at work. My mom referred to it as a family intervention. For 2 hours, they all took turns criticizing Sophia's character, while Ethan sat there looking smug. My mother delivered a lengthy lecture about Sophia's obvious jealousy of Ethan's attractiveness and success. What success? And how she had been flirting with him during dinner. She claimed Sophia made up the harassment because she felt sorry about leading Ethan on, and was now attempting to cover her tracks. Sophia, according to my aunt, was probably used to having attention from males at work and mistook nice conduct for stalking out of guilt. Ethan played his job brilliantly, appearing sad and perplexed as to why Sophia would fabricate such nasty lies about him. He kept stating how happy he was to finally have a sister-in-law and how saddened he was that she was attempting to turn everyone against him. Ryan and his friends backed him up, claiming they had simply come to the hospital to see Ryan's ailing grandmother, who supposedly transfers between floors and apartments every day. The toughest thing was when they began questioning Sophia's mental stability. They mentioned that she sometimes works night shifts, which suggested that a lack of sleep was contributing to her paranoia. They discussed how stressful working with sick children must be, as if she was putting her professional stress into harmless interactions with Ethan and his pals. My mother even had the audacity to suggest a therapist who may help Sophia work through her tendency to create drama. Sophia originally attempted to defend herself by politely discussing the harassment and even giving them the messages and voicemails again. But they kept talking over her, dismissing her facts as misunderstandings or hinting that she had caused everything. When Ryan began outlining in detail what Sophia had worn on specific days at work, demonstrating he had been monitoring her, my parents assumed Sophia was attempting to attract attention. Things grew terrible when they invited Ryan and his pals to join us for dessert, claiming they wanted to demonstrate what good young men they truly were. Sophia was having problems breathing and had to leave the room. When I attempted to follow her, my mother grabbed my elbow and told me it was time to choose between my real family and a clearly unstable girl who's just trying to cause problems. Sophia is who I choose. We left quickly, and I haven't spoken to my family since that night. Ethan's buddies have escalated their harassment, spreading reports at Sophia's workplace that she is mentally unstable and has a history of false claims. Her supervisor summoned her to a meeting yesterday to raise worries about drama at work. While he appeared empathetic, he warned her that the disruptions were beginning to damage her job performance and that she considered transferring to a different department or hospital. We've engaged an attorney to help us obtain a restraining order, but the procedure is sluggish. Sophia has been looking for jobs at other hospitals, and one of her old co-workers has offered to help her find work at a hospital some 300 miles away. I hate that we're being forced to take such harsh actions, but I can't face watching Sophia live in constant worry and tension. She now sobs before every shift and has lost weight because she is too anxious to eat properly. I really don't know what to do anymore. Every attempt to approach this sensibly has failed. My family is absolutely insane, the cops are ineffective, and it appears that Ethan is winning. How can you fight back when people want to believe the worst about you, and the best about your abuser? Update 2. I wish I had better news, but everything fell apart following what happened at my cousin Chloe's wedding last weekend. I've been trying to comprehend everything for the last few days before posting this update. What was supposed to be a happy family celebration turned into a nightmare that left Ethan in handcuffs and our family irrevocably shattered. To begin, Chloe has always been the only member of the family, aside from my grandfather, who recognized Ethan's deception. When we were youngsters, Mom caught Ethan abusing her cat and informed everyone, but my parents convinced us she was lying for attention. She never forgot, and she has been completely supportive of me throughout Sophia's condition. She even drafted a thorough statement for our attorney explaining Ethan's troubling background. When Chloe sent her wedding invites, Sophia and I were hesitant to go. But Chloe called us directly and said she only invited Ethan because her parents insisted, and she had hired extra security just to keep an eye on him. She also sat us at a table with her husband's family, far from my parents and Ethan. We assumed that with all of the witnesses and security present, Ethan wouldn't do something stupid. We were mistaken. The ceremony went well, owing in large part to Ethan's duties as a groomsman. Noah, Chloe's husband, is our cousin on the other side of the family and was unaware of any of the drama. Everything appeared to be in order at first glance. Ethan sat at the family table with our parents, while we were across the room with Chloe's in-laws. Sophia began to relax and enjoy herself for the first time in weeks. Sophia used the restroom around 9 p.m. She had been gone for approximately 10 minutes when I saw Ethan wasn't at his table anymore. Something seemed strange, so I went to check on her. Sophia screamed as I was about to enter the restroom. I began running when Noah and his brother turned the bend in front of me. They discovered Ethan pushing Sophia against the hallway wall outside the lavatory, attempting to force himself on her while she struggled. He had one hand over her mouth and the other forcefully grabbing her arm, leaving bruises. Just as I arrived, Noah and his brother had dragged Ethan off of her. Sophia shook and cried. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, and there were already visible bruises on her arm. Ethan was clearly intoxicated and began ranting that Sophia had been teasing him all night, she had literally not gone near him, and that she had followed him into the hallway. She arrived first. Noah's brother, a police officer from another city, quickly called the local police, and Noah assisted Sophia into a private room where Chloe and her mother attempted to calm her down. This is where things went even worse, if that's possible. When the cops arrived, my parents attempted to stop them from detaining Ethan. My mother cried that it was all a misunderstanding, that Sophia had plainly misled Ethan, and that they shouldn't ruin his life for one minor drunken mistake. My father physically attempted to stop the officers from handcuffing Ethan, urging that they treat this as a family matter. Ethan went between crying about how Sophia seduced him and threatening everyone, claiming that none of us understood what he was capable of. He appeared absolutely unhinged. As they eventually got him into the police car, he started yelling that Sophia was a whore who had been asking for it since the day they met. Some guests captured the entire event on their phones. The aftermath was catastrophic. My parents got into a frenzy, phoning everyone in the family to provide their account of the events. They claimed Sophia took Ethan into a quiet spot, came onto him, and shouted assault when he rebuffed her. They claimed she planned the entire incident to exact revenge on Ethan for revealing her lies about the harassment. They even claimed that Noah and his brother hit Ethan before the cops arrived, which they did not, and that Sophia hurt herself. The one bright spot is that the wedding video shows Ethan following Sophia into the restroom hallway. With her bruises, many witnesses, and video proof of Ethan's breakdown during the arrest, our lawyer believes we have a solid case. Several relatives who attended the wedding have come forward to testify about Ethan's actions throughout the night, including inappropriate remarks he made about Sophia and how he pursued her during the reception. My parents have threatened to disown me unless Sophia drops the claims. They've been phoning and messaging nonstop, alternately apologizing for tearing the family apart and threatening to cut me out of the inheritance. They even showed up at my apartment yesterday, generating a disturbance that prompted my neighbors to contact the police. My mother screamed over how I was putting her sweet boy in jail, while my father swore to make sure I never worked in this state again. Sophia and I reached a decision. She accepted a job offer at a hospital 300 miles away, and I plan to work remotely for my firm. We're moving at the end of next month. Many people may believe we are fleeing, but we simply need to escape the toxicity and start over somewhere new. Chloe understands and has agreed to keep us up to date on any family developments. The most difficult part of all of this is knowing that my family will never accept Ethan needs help. Even after seeing him abuse someone at a wedding in front of witnesses, they continue to defend him and blame the victim. I've often wondered what might have happened if someone had intervened when we were kids, but we'll never know. Right now, I just need to concentrate on safeguarding Sophia and creating our new life together, away from Ethan and my parents' enabling behavior. Update 3. I hadn't planned to submit any more updates, but something happened yesterday that I feel compelled to tell. After 4 years of fortunate silence from my family, I received a frantic phone call from my mother, leaving me feeling both vindicated and heartbroken. First, a little update on Sophia and myself. We married 2 years ago in a short ceremony attended by Chloe's family and Sophia's relatives. We purchased a home in our new location, and Sophia is now the head pediatric nurse at her hospital. I am still working remotely for the same company, but I was promoted to senior developer last year. We're expecting our first kid, a baby girl, in 3 months. Life has been serene and cheerful, which makes what I am about to say much more frightening. Yesterday afternoon, I was in a conference when my phone started ringing incessantly with calls from my mother. I normally disregard strange numbers because my family has a tendency of purchasing new phones to reach us, but this time she left a message that sounded truly frantic. When I called back, she was sobbing so hard that I could not hear her. Ethan married a woman named Olivia last year. We were all unaware of it because we hadn't spoken to that side of the family since the wedding. Apparently, Ethan met Olivia in church, and their families swiftly planned their marriage. My mother kept going on about how wonderful everything was, how Ethan had finally found a good Christian woman who understood him, and how they were all so happy, until last week. Olivia's coworker called the police last Thursday after she failed to show up for work for 3 days. Officers discovered Olivia seriously injured during a wellness check. She had 2 broken ribs, a shattered wrist, and several bruises across her body. But here's what really stunned me. When the police looked into it further, they discovered that my father had been assisting Ethan in concealing the abuse for months. Olivia eventually broke down and told the police everything. Ethan began striking her just 2 months after they married. Every time she threatened to leave or tell someone, my father would intervene, using his real estate contacts to push Olivia's family about their mortgage or threatening to fire her from a job at one of his friends' companies. He even persuaded Olivia's parents that she was mentally disturbed while fabricating allegations about Ethan, employing the same tactics they employed against Sophia. The final event occurred when Olivia was promoted at work, which would have provided her financial independence. Ethan lost control and thrashed her so brutally that she couldn't enter. When she called my father for assistance, he advised her to ice it and remember her wedding vows. That's when her coworker stepped in and called the police. Ethan and my father were both arrested, one for domestic abuse and the other for witness intimidation and conspiracy. My mother urged me to return and help fix things. She kept stating, the family needs to stick together during a crisis, that Ethan and Dad needed my help, and that Olivia was obviously exaggerating everything, just like Sophia did. I lost it. I informed her how I felt about her enabling Ethan's actions throughout his childhood. I reminded her of what they did to Sophia, and how they decided to support Ethan despite witnessing him assault her at Chloe's wedding. I questioned whether she had ever considered that if they had helped Ethan when he was younger or held him accountable for his behavior, Olivia might not be in the hospital right now. My mother burst into tears, admitting that they should have acted sooner. She acknowledged that she and Dad had always known Ethan had problems, but they believed they were protecting him by keeping everything hidden. Too little, too late. I hung up and blocked her new number. Chloe called me later to confirm some information she'd received from extended family. Olivia's parents are distraught and regret not believing her sooner. They totally support her in bringing accusations against both Ethan and my father. Police are also looking into potential additional victims, since numerous of Ethan's ex-girlfriends have come forward with similar allegations of abuse and stalking. Sophia proposed that we contact Olivia through Chloe and offer her assistance if she requires it, which we will most likely do. Sophia mentioned how fortunate she was to have assistance when coping with Ethan, and Olivia may need someone who understands what she's going through. Some may believe I'm being cold toward my parents, but I've learned that encouraging toxic behavior simply creates more victims. My family had numerous opportunities to change, but they decided not to. Now they can deal with the consequences of their decisions without my assistance. My goal now is to defend my own family, my wife, our unborn daughter, and the quiet life we've created away from their toxicity. Update 4. Many people have messaged me asking for updates on the situation with Ethan, my father, and Olivia, so this is what has happened in the last 6 months. First, some wonderful news from our end. 3 months ago, Sophia and I welcomed our daughter Isla. She's completely healthy and stunningly lovely. Parenthood has been incredible, and it has only confirmed that breaking connections with my problematic family was the correct decision. Chloe and her husband came to see Isla last month, and seeing them with her only confirmed what true family love is like. Now for an update on Ethan's and my father's cases. Chloe has been keeping us updated because she still maintains contact with some distant relatives. Ethan agreed to a plea deal last month. He will serve an 8-year jail sentence for serious domestic abuse, with the possibility of parole after 5 years. My father's case is still ongoing, although his attorney is apparently attempting to work out a settlement. His real estate license has been suspended pending an inquiry, and most of his business partners have parted ways with him. My mother's progress is the most startling. After our previous phone chat, she began therapy. According to Chloe, she has moved out of the family home and filed for divorce from my father last week. She sent me a 12-page letter apologizing for everything, enabling Ethan his entire life, failing to protect me as a child, and, most importantly, how they treated Sophia. She revealed that she and my father had essentially produced the monster Ethan by never holding him accountable. I have not responded to your mail. Part of me respects that she is finally confronting the truth, but it is too little, too late. Where was this understanding when Ethan was torturing animals as a kid? Or while he was stalking Sophia? Or when they witnessed him assaulting her during Chloe's wedding? Sophia and I are still talking about allowing her to have supervised contact with Isla, but that will be years away, if it ever happens. Olivia came out to us via Chloe. She is doing better. She lives with her sister in another state and is having extensive therapy. She has filed for divorce and is completely cooperating with prosecutors. According to Chloe, numerous other women have come forward with claims that Ethan mistreated them in the past, including 2 from his church. The police are looking into those situations as well. Olivia's parents have been wonderfully supportive once the truth was revealed. They publicly apologized to her for not believing her sooner and severed all connections with my parents. They're even collaborating with domestic violence organizations to help other families identify indicators of abuse and manipulation. Our extended family is fundamentally divided into 2 factions. The majority of our younger cousins and relatives have supported us and Olivia, while the older generation continues to make excuses for Ethan and my dad. Chloe's mother, my aunt, has formed a family therapy group for relatives who want to understand how things got so bad and how to make things better for future generations. Sophia and I are focused on our kid and our lives here. Sophia went back to work part-time last week and was promoted to director of pediatric nursing. I'm still working remotely, but I'm considering starting my own software consulting firm. We've created a fantastic community here, complete with amazing friends and chosen family. Sometimes I consider contacting my mother or responding to her letter, but then I look at Isla and think about how my parents would expect me to let Ethan near her if we were still in contact, claiming he deserves another chance. That thought alone reminds me, my brother stalked my girlfriend, but my family defended him. We were threatened, so we left, started over, and cut off all contact. As soon as my girlfriend Sophia, 25, walked in, Ethan began acting aggressively, making her incredibly uncomfortable with absolutely out-of-character conduct. He virtually pushed my husband left me in an Italian town after a fight, thinking I'd come back. But I didn't. Now he's the one trying to find me. Let's see how she gets back, Ethan jokes, slamming the car door in the evening air. Our rental car's taillights faded as they disappeared around the tight Italian street, leaving just dust and my husband's friends' laughter. I stood paralyzed, mouth wide mid-sentence. Our disagreement outside the modest cafe was rendered irrelevant by his unimaginable deed. He's coming back, I muttered, Getting odd eyes from people eating dinner at sidewalk tables. This is just to scare me. The knot in my stomach intensified as minutes became hours. Darkness fell over the unknown town whose name I couldn't pronounce. I never envisioned Ethan drinking that much at lunch when I begged him not to. His friends, college buddies celebrating their yearly guys' reunion that I grudgingly joined, encouraged him. When I suggested returning to our hotel, Leo replied, "She's always controlling you, man." Ordering another round. Ethan followed me out, his words garbled but his wrath clear. Both sides' years of hatred erupted quickly, making the fight ugly. He hissed, "Your purse has your passport, right? Before getting behind the wheel. Then you'll figure it out. You're so smart, always telling me what to do." Complete night descended as reality set in. Suddenly, the lovely Italian town felt dangerous. Cash count, €80, $37. Too little for a trip home and a hotel night. Ethan's wallet held my credit cards. When my small purse was full, he offered to carry them. I discovered the lowest pension in a shabby room above a bakery with a tiny bed and corner sink. Although she knew no English, the old woman who escorted me to the room patted my arm affectionately. "He blocked me," I gasped, glancing at my phone. 27 Ethan calls went to voicemail. Unanswered text messages arrived. Leo, Daniel, and all Ethan's carmates were tried. All blocked. I shuddered as I realized this was a premeditated humiliation. Breaks in sleep were punctuated by optimistic phone checks and panic. By daybreak, I believed this nightmare would cease. Ethan would apologize and blame me for overreacting to his joke. I'd be angry but relieved to return to our carefully crafted life in Boston, where he was a respected architect and I was his supporting wife who'd given up her design job to manage their home and social calendar. He didn't arrive. On the second day, I rationed my money and bought only a sandwich for lunch while touring the town's perimeter, checking every hotel and restaurant for our tour group. By dark, I learned they'd gone to Florence without me. On the third day, a friendly cafe proprietor saw me waiting outside and offered me free espresso and, in terrible English, directions to the police station. The officer looked unsurprised by my narrative, as if abandoned tourists were common, but his limited English and my non-existent Italian left me with a filed report and a sympathetic nod. The hardest decision of my life came that afternoon. In front of a crowded pawnshop display, I removed my wedding ring, the 2-carat diamond Ethan had upgraded on our 5th anniversary to replace our humble band. The merchant gave me significantly less than its worth but enough to support my next step. "America, call family?" the pawn trader said, counting euros. Though I nodded mechanically, a different idea was emerging inside. Family meant explaining, hearing my mother's "I told you so" about Ethan's rage, and facing acquaintances who saw our marriage's flaws I'd tried to hide. When I arrived, the bus station was silent. I only saw travel magazine locations on its electronic board. An overnight bus to Rome connected to ferries, buses, and locations Ethan and his buddies wouldn't look for me if they tried. Finger hovered on my father's name and contacts. He sent money for a flight home in one call. One call would take me back to my existence of steadily shrinking to fit Ethan's ego and demands. Ethan joked about hiding my portfolios when I considered returning to interior design. He asked, "Why complicate things? We don't need the money, and I need you focused on our life." I chuckled at it then, but sitting in that dingy station, I viewed it as another fence in his pen surrounding me. "Where you go?" inquired the ticket agent, an older woman with sympathetic eyes who'd been watching me stare at the departure board for 20 minutes. "Greece," I said, realizing my choice. "The furthest coastal village you can get me to." 14 hours later, I fell off the last bus, stiff from uncomfortable seats and strain. A place whose name I couldn't pronounce has whitewashed homes and the fragrance of salt air and olive groves. My phone battery died between nations. My stomach was empty with hunger, and the weight of what I'd done, or been done to me, weighed on my shoulders. Exhaustion blurred my vision as I headed toward the town center. 3 days of emotional whiplash had left me raw, alternating between rage at Ethan, anxiety of my uncertain future, and a strange, unexpected glimmer of deadly release. I could spend 2 nights in the cheapest room with my leftover euros. After that, I had no goal, friends, or local language words beyond please, and thank you. But as I watched the sunset turn the Aegean waves gold and pink, I felt tranquil for the first time in years. Ethan wanted to teach me reliance. Instead, he accidentally freed me. As I left the settlement, the Greek sun burnt my feet in sightseeing sandals. Dehydration, hunger, and mental weariness made my world spin after my water bottle ran out hours earlier. Silver-green trees bordered the dusty route, their leaves gleaming like coins in the wind. I faintly saw olive orchards before my knees crumbled. I scarcely felt the ground collide with my face. A peculiar peace swept over me as darkness edged my vision. Maybe it was fitting. Abandoned by my husband in one country, collapsed alone in another. I closed my eyes, exhausted since Ethan left. Fosmu, Koritsimu? My light, my girl? She spoke through my haze, followed by aged hands rolling me over. An aged face with deep creases and warm, concerned eyes came into focus. She quickly spoke Greek, caressing my cheeks and offering a canteen. Water revived me enough to sit up, but my head still spun furiously. She called herself Daphne, repeating it while pointing. She gestured Claire. I attempted it. Daphne lifted me up, her petite figure surprisingly strong. She pointed to an olive tree-lined stone home and indicated walking. She led me carefully up the slope, and I nodded, powerless. I entered the farmhouse kitchen to the smell of herbs on wooden beams and something tasty on an ancient stove. Daphne placed me at a shabby wooden table before calling for help. A man's voice responded, and an elderly man with a sunburned face and silver mustache stepped in the doorway cleaning his hands. Daphne? Yanis pointed to his wife. He tentatively nodded at me, his eyes inquiring yet friendly. Daphne gave me a drink of chilled water and a bowl of basic soup. As the perfume reached my nose, my stomach growled, making Daphne smile. The evening was a mess of miscommunication. I used minimal words, hand gestures, and tears to describe my circumstance. Daphne nodded like she understood, but I knew she couldn't. Yanis was quiet but attentive, asking Daphne gesture-based questions. I took their spare room, a basic room with whitewashed walls and a tiny bed covered in a handmade quilt. I fell asleep, too fatigued to protest. Crowing roosters and fresh bread greeted morning. The foot of my bed had a basic cotton dress and cardigan that seemed decades old but just laundered. They were loose on me but a wonderful change from my trip suit. Daphne smiled at me and served strong coffee and delicious bread with olive oil and honey in the kitchen. I felt embarrassed after dawn cleared my head. I was fed and clothed by these strangers without inquiry. I needed to explain, pay, and move on. I expressed my thankfulness and want to return to the community using bad English and my phone's translation software, charged by Yanis adapter. Daphne's face dropped quickly. She vigorously shook her head, pointing outside to the rain on the windows and then to my still blistered feet. Stay, she said, using one of her few English words. Rest. I tried to depart several times over the next 3 days but was gently resisted. Daphne stopped me at the door with my purse and shoes, her sorrowful expression making me feel guilty. She held my hand and opened a little wooden box on the mantel to expose photos. Her fingers trembled as she pointed to a young woman with Daphne's eyes and Yanis' smile. Irini, she whispered, pointing far away. Australia. She cradled and held her hand at waist height, indicating a child, shedding tears. Grandbaby, she said in English, pointing to a recent baby photo. No, see? Then I understood. Daphne saw me as a replacement for her daughter. My heart broke for her loss, not manipulation. I nodded slowly and put my purse on the door hook. As I adjusted to their agricultural life, new rituals emerged daily. Daphne taught me how to pick chicken eggs without scaring them and hang laundry so the mountain air would catch it. Yanis patiently taught me to recognize vegetable garden weeds after I accidentally pulled out a herb. The labor was physical, unlike my meticulously groomed life in Boston, yet rewarding in ways I'd forgotten existed. My body objected at first, used to designer gyms and measured workouts. My hands got calluses and muscles I didn't realize ached each night. Each day, my pain subsided and my strength increased. Most crucially, farm chores and language lessons replaced my ongoing mental cycle of abandonment. Sitting on the modest porch while Daphne stitched and Yanis smoked his pipe at night, I found serenity. My betrayal still hurt, but here, among ancient olive trees and rural life, it felt like an unexpected chapter. Daphne sat with me shelling garden peas 2 weeks following my arrival. After thoughtfully studying my face, she asked slowly in her improving English, "Home? You want to go home?" She gestured like a plane and pointed at America. I was surprised by the question. Home. Our stylish Boston brownstone with designer furniture and matching decor came to mind. It also highlighted Ethan's controlling behavior, his helpful management of our finances that left me without independence, his subtle discouragement of my friendships, and his dismissal of my job goals. I cried as I spoke in a language Daphne couldn't comprehend but felt feelings that crossed the linguistic barrier. I told her about Ethan's betrayal, years of gently giving up parts of myself to make peace, and being abandoned like baggage in a distant country. As I spoke, Daphne's aged hand covered mine. She pointed to her heart, then the farm, then me once I finished. It was clear, I could stay if I wished. Work, I responded gently, imitating Yanis's olive tree care. I stay. I work. Daphne's smile burst like the Aegean daybreak. She nodded and squeezed my hand before returning to the peas, as if we'd decided on tomorrow's dinner rather than a life change. My olive-growing education began when I stayed. Next morning, Daphne woke me up with Irene's work attire and thick boots when stars still shone. I followed her and Yanis to the grove, where the first light of dawn barely revealed the ancient trees, half asleep. Elias, Daphne replied, pointing to the fruit-laden branches. She delicately raked the branches with wooden rakes to release the olives onto nets below. My first attempt rained branches, leaves, and a few olives, prompting Yanis' meticulous correction. My city-soft hands had blisters by mid-morning, the sun shining overhead, and my shoulders burning from exertion. Boston lady hands, Daphne mocked, scrutinizing my palms at lunch. She returned with a herbal, beeswax-scented salve from the house. The cooling relief was immediate as she put it on my raw flesh. "Tomorrow, better," she said. To her surprise, she was right. I improved my technique, strength, and hands every day. Within weeks, I could work with them for hours without complaining, proud of the fruit piles. Sorting was harder than harvesting. We carefully selected the olives by quality at a large table under a pergola, perfect for premium oil, slightly blemished for second grade, damaged for soap production. Daphne initially watched me closely and gently corrected my blunders. Her corrections decreased as my eye learned minor differences. "You learn fast," Yanis said one evening, improving his terrible English and my basic Greek. He gave me his highest compliment, and I felt warm. I learned beyond the groves in Daphne's kitchen, which originally intimidated me with its lack of modern amenities. My Boston cooking skills included following fancy magazine recipes for dinner gatherings that delighted Ethan's coworkers. Daphne's cuisine was based on years of experience and observation, not measuring cups or temps. "Watch," she'd say, kneading bread dough with practice. I tried to emulate her moves but failed miserably. My first outside stone oven loaves were deformed, underbaked, or burned. Daphne advised me to practice, breaking up my worst attempts to taste them. All learning is waste. I found her acceptance of imperfection revolutionary. In my past, mistakes were hidden, not stepping stones to mastery. The simplicity of their meals showed how processed my American diet was. Everything came from their land or surrounding farms. Sun-warmed veggies, morning eggs, and cheese from the goats down the road. The flavors were fresh and needed only olive oil, lemon, and Daphne's garden herbs. This diet and work altered my body. As lean muscle replaced fat, my luxury clothes loosened. Olive oil soap and sweat brightened my skin, once preserved by pricey creams. A stranger peered back at me in the small mirror over the bathroom sink. Tanner, stronger, and somehow more substantial despite weighing less. Daphne and I communicated beyond labor and food as my Greek vocabulary grew. Her black and white village childhood photos were displayed in her picture albums during evening breaks. I was surprised to learn she taught before joining her family's olive business after marriage. Imitating keyboard typing, she asked, "You?" She saw images of my interior design projects from before marriage on my phone, a career Ethan had disregarded as a hobby. Daphne pointed out her favorites and made admiring sounds as she studied them. She said, "Beautiful thinking," patting her temple. Her affirmation of my creative labor brought tears to my eyes, simple appreciation that Ethan had steadily withheld throughout our marriage. Daphne taught me to knit one rainy afternoon, patiently letting me drop stitches and make uneven rows. My first project was a lumpy, uneven scarf I fashioned by hand. I was more proud of it than the luxury cashmere Ethan gave me for Christmas. Next came a clay mug Yanis helped me make and a woven basket a neighbor taught me. Each thing had hours of study and connection, stories no luxury could. As I became less materialistic, my collection grew. Daphne and Yanis approached me one morning after 3 months of without pay except accommodation and board. They showed me the small amount of olive oil they crushed and packaged from our harvest in a small building. "Market day," Daphne said, pointing to the calendar. "You come." Locals and tourists explored the village market, where farmers and artists sold their items. Daphne and Yanis placed golden green oil, olive soap, and preserved olives on their plain table. They surprised me by placing me at the front of the table to talk to customers. My terrible Greek and their limited English caused confusion and hilarity, but sales increased throughout the day. Daphne gave me a euro envelope after the market closed. "Just, your part," she said. "Fair work, fair pay." I looked at the small amount, maybe enough for one supper at Ethan and my favorite places. This money symbolized independence acquired via hard work, which I hadn't enjoyed in years. No attachments, no hidden gratitude or compliance expectations, just fair pay for honest effort. I kept the envelope beneath my pillow that night, touching it occasionally to establish its authenticity. Ethan took charge of our finances to simplify things, leaving me with credit cards tied to accounts he oversaw during our decade of marriage. This modest stack of euros was the first step toward reconstructing my life. As I fell asleep, I realized I hadn't thought about Ethan during market day, preoccupied with Greek transaction terms and product pride. Olive trees, cookery courses, and the rising confidence that I was capable of more than he had ever allowed me to believe had replaced him in my thoughts. Daphne and Giannis asked me to dine at the Village Square Taverna the next week, my first since arriving. A borrowed blouse from Daphne made me uneasy as we entered the busy business. Michalis, the owner, enthusiastically hugged the couple before looking at me. "Our American," Daphne proudly remarked in Greek, a term I know refers to me, Claire. Michalis grinned and took us to their usual table. Giannis cleared his throat and spoke carefully English over grilled seafood and village wine. "Claire, we want talk business with you." He surprised me with his seriousness. Had I erred? Was I ready to move on? Daphne patted my hand across the table and continued where her husband left off. "We old now? 68, 70 years?" she said to Giannis. "No children here. Irini not coming back." Giannis nodded solemnly. "We think retire soon. 2, 3 years? But olive trees," he gestured. 200 years old. Need young hands." Understanding made me gasp. Daphne smiled with crinkled eyes. "You learn fast. Work hard. We teach everything." She spread her hands in offering. "Business yours." The idea shocked me. They scarcely knew me, a foreigner who came into their life months before. They offered a future I couldn't foresee. "But I don't know enough," I mumbled. "The trees, the pressing, the business side." "You learn." Giannis insisted. "We teach. No rush." My real apprenticeship began that night. Not only an extra pair of hands, I inherited generations of knowledge. Each morning, Giannis showed me how soil variances affected taste profiles, how to spot disease early, and when to harvest each region for best oil quality. Daphne taught me their business records, which included handwritten ledgers and basic computer spreadsheets their grandson had set up during a holiday visit years earlier. She tracked income and expenses in a useful but archaic way. I spent hours improving their systems to simplify inventory and sales monitoring. "Look," I showed Daphne one night how to filter the spreadsheet to reveal which oil sold best at which marketplaces. Her eyes expanded as numbers revealed patterns. "Smart," she nodded. "Boston lady brain good for business." With their permission, I made minor marketing changes. I learned about flavor profiles and meal pairings from Daphne's many culinary classes and updated our hand-labeled bottles. I answered tourists' questions at our market stand with a simple pamphlet on their traditional practices. I made connections outside Daphne and Giannis' circle as my Greek improved. The pharmacist who prescribed Daphne's blood pressure medicine stopped by our market booth for non-business chats. The baker's wife invited me to her monthly coffee with village women, a daunting yet valuable immersion in local language and customs. When the taverna started serving our premium oil and placing small cards with our new labels on each table, Michalis became an unexpected ally. "Good for you. Good for me." He winked when I thanked him. 2 nearby eateries contacted us about providing after hearing about us. I attended my first village ceremony, the butcher's granddaughter's christening, 6 months into my new existence. From the rear of the modest church, I watched the community ritual with a lump in my throat. The elderly priest recognized me and greeted me afterward, stopping his Athens seminary English. "You bring new life to Old Grove," he murmured, his rheumy eyes gleaming. "Good for village. Young people leave for Athens, for America. Village needs new blood." His acceptance seemed to eliminate the last obstacle. After that, name day celebrations, beach parties, and village committee meetings concerning the summer festival were more frequent. Each incident added to my web of connections. Zoe, the weaver next to our weekly market stall, became a friend. Young widow, she had a sharp wit and pragmatic approach like my college friend. Our chats in my increasing Greek and her superb English covered business plans, village gossip, and personal observations. You never speak of America," she said quietly as we packed away our unsold products. "Family there? Friends?" Question stung me abruptly. I'd forgotten my former life since I was so concentrated on my new one. "My parents died years ago. A few friends, but..." I paused, recognizing Ethan had steadily removed me from my support network by continuously finding reasons why my college pals were difficult or work colleagues used me. Zoe nodded knowingly. "The husband who left you in Italy? You never say his name." "Ethan," I began, the word strange after months of stillness. "His name is Ethan." Her honesty was refreshing after months of Daphne and Iana's subtle evasion. I don't know, I said. I haven't checked. My phone, I waved unclearly. I had turned it on sometimes to shoot shots but had abandoned my American email and social networks, afraid of what may be there. Zoe arched her eyebrow. Perhaps time to look. Not for him. For you. To close the door properly. I remembered her words. After helping Daphne cook dinner, I charged my ancient phone and connected to the farmhouse's basic Wi-Fi in my room. I signed into my neglected email account with shaky fingers. The screen showed hundreds of unread messages. Several former pals sent me messages ranging from casual check-ins to serious queries. I felt shame as I withdrew from their lives without explanation, just as I had from Ethan's. I noticed a post from my former design mentor. Job opportunity, followed by urgent follow-ups. Opening it revealed she recommended me for a remote consulting employment with a sustainable building materials company. The final email, 2 weeks ago, said the post was still open if I was interested. Ethan Davis email with the subject line, I know where you are. Froze my fingers before I could examine this unexpected bridge to my former existence. It arrived hours earlier, according to the timestamp. I opened it, heart racing. Claire, it's taken months and a private investigator, but I finally tracked you to that backwater in Greece. This has gone on long enough. I'm coming to bring you home and end this ridiculous tantrum. My flight lands in Athens on Thursday. Be ready. 3 days from now. The room whirled as panic and wrath crashed in my chest. How dare he? After months without speaking, he expected to find me like lost luggage. As I stumbled downstairs, I held my phone. Daphne looked up from the account ledger on the kitchen table, her smile dimming as she saw my reaction. Bad news from America, she whispered. Ethan, I did. He's coming here. Thursday. Daphne narrowed her gaze. She slipped an envelope across the table toward me from under the ledger. Good timing then? Was waiting for right moment. Greek-English legal documents carrying my name and Daphne and Giannis were inside. Partnership agreement, Daphne said. 1/3 business yours now, not future now. I stared at the document, tears in my eyes, recognizing its meaning. Genuine collaboration, not simply job or apprenticeship. Room to stay, basis to build on. Not charity, but honor. You choose what happens Thursday, Daphne replied firmly, striking the papers. You have home here, business here, friends here. She pointed at my phone. That man, he no longer decides. Her words enveloped me in assurance. I felt anchored for the first time since being abandoned in that Italian town. Ethan arrived to find a drastically different woman than the one he left. The ensuing days were a whirlwind of preparation, not Ethan's style. No bags or tears, only emotional fortification. Sophia, the village's only lawyer, helped me write Greek and English divorce documents. I tentatively accepted remote consultation from my former design mentor. I even emailed friends I left behind, explaining briefly without regrets. On Thursday, the Greek summer sky was clear and bright. Giannis and I were evaluating olive oil samples in the processing shed when a rental car engine started up in the afternoon. Daphne stood at the threshold, worried yet determined. He is here, she said. Heart racing, I wiped my hands on my work apron and left. Ethan stood outside a silver automobile with fashionable sunglasses on his nicely coiffed hair, disliking the rustic cottage. I knew his casual but costly travel suit from previous business trips. Tailored chinos and a button-down that probably cost more than a week's olive oil profit. He initially ignored me, allowing me precious seconds to calm down. The ancient olive trees and aged stone buildings of my birthplace made this man who had once been my world seem smaller. Ethan, I called, calmly to my surprise. His bewilderment when he turned was nearly funny. He looked from my work boots to my sun-browned arms, then at my scrunchy-tied hair. I watched his face struggle with recognition and incredulity. My God, Claire, what happened to you? The familiar, critical tone that formerly would have sent me racing to rectify whatever he found missing now flowed over me like a wave. Life happened, I said, approaching him slowly. What are you doing here, Ethan? His charm slipped into place as he removed his sunglasses and extended his arms. I've come to take you home, of course. This has gone on long enough, don't you think? Whatever point you were trying to make. This isn't about making a point, I said, halting far away. This is about making a life. His smile sank. I heard Daphne and Giannis leaving the home quietly behind me. While they couldn't understand us, they hid in plain sight, ready to act. Ethan hardened as he saw them. Are these the people you've been staying with? Have they been holding you here? Because if so... I interrupted. They've been teaching me. About olive farming, about community, About kindness without conditions. I pointed to the woods. I'm part owner now. I have a business here. He looked incredulous, then condescending, as I knew. A business, Claire? Be serious. You're a designer, not a farmer. This is what, some eat, pray, love phase after our fight? I admit I shouldn't have left you in Italy. It was a stupid, drunken mistake. I've apologized. Now it's time to come home. You've apologized? When? In what universe does tracking me down and demanding I return count as an apology? The charm vanished as his jaw tightened. Fine, I'm sorry I left you in Italy. It was immature and wrong. Is that what you want to hear? Can we move past this now? Why did you even look for me, Ethan? It's been months. Why now? He shuffled uncomfortable, seeing the old couple observing us carefully. Can we discuss this privately? In the car, perhaps. They don't speak English, and I have nothing to hide from them. Why now? His shoulders sagged. Your parents have been calling. Friends asking questions at events. Clients wondering why you're not at the house when they visit. It looks, he said. Bad for your image, I said. It damaged your reputation? Our reputation, he retorted. Our life together. The one we built over 10 years of marriage. The one you built, I said. The one where I gradually became nothing more than an accessory to your success. Tell me, Ethan, did you even notice how unhappy I was before Italy? Did you care? His expression grew darker. We had a good life, Claire. A beautiful home, financial security, respect in the community. What more could you possibly want? I found purpose, connection, and agency over my own choices here, in a place you dismiss as primitive and backward. I pointed to the modest stone home behind me. He protested, this isn't you, sounding desperate. The Claire I know wouldn't choose manual labor and poverty over comfort and position. I grinned, understanding his statement's core truth. You're right. The Claire you knew wouldn't have. But that woman died in Italy when her husband abandoned her as a joke. The woman standing before you made different choices. Daphne came over and pressed our partnership agreement into my palm. She recognized the occasion even though she couldn't follow our words. The document was unfolded and held to Ethan. I have legal ties here now. A business partnership. Responsibilities to people who value me for my contributions, not my appearance or social connections. Face flushed with rage. This is ridiculous. Whatever game you're playing? It's not a game, I answered, taking Sophia's envelope from my pocket. These are divorce papers, Ethan. Already filed, with provisions for division of assets. He studied the package as if it may burn him. You can't be serious. You'd throw away everything for this? He mocked the small property. I'm not throwing away anything. I'm choosing something better, something real. I approached and placed the envelope in his hard hand. You left me, Ethan. You drove away laughing. You just never expected I'd find my way without you. His fingers immediately wrapped around the documents, his expression alternating between amazement, wrath, and wounded pride. You'll regret this, he muttered, but even he thought the threat was empty. When the novelty wears off and you're still hauling olives in the hot sun at 60, you'll remember what you gave up. Maybe, I said. But I'd rather risk regret from choices I made than live with the certainty of regret from choices made for me. Yanis went closer and placed a worn hand on my shoulder. Despite not understanding our conversation, he saw the conclusion in our body language. He spoke Greek to Ethan in a stern but loving manner. What did he say? Ethan inquired, lowering his voice. He said the road back to Athens is dangerous after dark. You should leave now to reach the city before nightfall. Ethan looked between us and realized this wasn't a negotiation or rescue. Adieu. He returned to his rented car with the divorce papers without saying a word. Daphne put her hand in mine as the car drove off the dirt road. The three of us turned toward my residence. Tonight's tasks, cataloging oil samples, cooking dinner, and checking tomorrow's market inventory. My spouse left me in a strange nation, thinking I'd be powerless and return after learning my lesson. Instead, I discovered fertile footing to grow stronger and deeper roots than he expected. The cruelest actions can bring the greatest blessings. Ethan accidentally freed me while trying to break me. On Christmas, I handed my parents a copy of the will they had hidden from me after quietly erasing me from the family photo and their lives. I gave my parents an envelope the next day and warned, "Don't open it here." They did. Mother cried. Dad paled. I wish I could say it startled me. I wish I could say it was shocking like a movie ending. However, it felt oddly anticipated. After brushing snow off my boots, I looked up in my parents' living room and saw the portrait. Large, shiny, properly framed, hanging proudly over the fireplace like our family's crown gem. Everyone participated. Mom, in her beloved red jacket, beaming like she hadn't spent decades sighing at everything but Olivia. Dad with that weird grin he only uses for pictures and golf course selfies. Olivia, of course, front and center, wearing a beige turtleneck that probably cost more than my rent and posing candidly like she's laughing at something sweet, maybe a trust fund joke. Then I was gone. Not even pushed aside. No background blur, just gone. The crop was fine. It was purposeful and clean. I felt like I'd been seamlessly removed from their life. No marks, no roughness, just removed. I stared at it for 4 or 5 seconds, long enough to knot my stomach but not noticeable. Maybe they noticed but didn't care. Mom called from the kitchen. Dinner's almost ready, like we were one happy family. Her roast smelled like rosemary and lemon. Holiday scents. Comfort scents. I loved those smells when they mattered. I entered the kitchen after hanging up my coat and saying hello. Olivia swirled wine in a glass like she was hosting a seasonal pairings program. She kissed my cheek with her air kiss, just close enough to register but distant enough to avoid touching me. She responded, "You made it," like this was her house and I was late to an event. I smiled, the type you give after screaming into a pillow 3 times this month, and concluded it wasn't worth wasting your voice. The customary dinner performance. Dad cut the roast like a Hallmark commercial audition. Mom praised Olivia's skincare twice. No one inquired about my health. Nobody asked me what I was doing or where I lived. The only inquiry I got was if I still drove that little car, which means, we have no idea what's going on in your life, and we're hoping you'll fill in the blanks so we can pretend we care. I left gaps. A classic gold watch from Mom and Dad was what Olivia opened instead. "Nothing fancy," Mom said, which is funny because I caught the number on the receipt folded under the tissue paper. I'd have to work a week and a half to afford it, assuming I skipped groceries. "Oh my God. You guys," Olivia beams. "This is just, wow. Thought you'd like it," Dad responded, beaming like he'd landed a merger. I got a mug with somebody's favorite daughter, which was probably ironic. Was it? Not sure. I excused myself after dessert, exhausted. Mom offered me her guest room. No, my room, no, your old room, just, the guest room. Beige blankets, dusty bookcase, one fuming lamp. I closed the door, turned on the lamp, which flickered on time, and sat on the bed. I took out the envelope. It was in my bag the whole time. Heavy ivory paper, embossed seal. I considered handing it to them in the morning, after the stockings, cinnamon buns, and performance. But standing in that living room, gazing at that photo, witnessing my entire life erased like a family algorithm error. Indeed, I changed my mind. They deleted me, not forgot me. Carefully, strategically. Maybe I was a lousy brand partner. Turning the envelope in my hands. Felt heavy? I slept in that night and let the home settle. Same creaky floors. Same hall wall clock ticking. Dad snored. Mom said something about bringing the excellent plates tomorrow. Olivia laughed routinely and breathlessly. The Golden Child soundtrack. Closed my eyes, I contemplated the years. When I got into my ideal institution, they remarked, "We're so proud," then asked if I might defer a year to help Olivia with her portfolio. When I missed rent and called home, Dad stated, "Things are tight right now," while organizing Olivia's birthday cruise. My boyfriend's name was forgotten at supper. He never returned. I didn't blame him. I was tired of blaming my sensitivity and miscommunication. I quit making excuses that night in a strange bed. I would deliver the envelope tomorrow. I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't cry. My voice was silent. I'd smile, say, "Merry Christmas," and let the truth do what years of silence couldn't. The scent of coffee and cinnamon rolls and Olivia's voice talking about suitcase weight constraints and travel anxieties roused me up. Ironic, as she didn't pay for her travel, luggage, suitcase, or shoes that cost more than my monthly rent. Devastating thing. A prayer. I stayed in the guest room longer than required since I wasn't ready to return to my family's Christmas sitcom set. I could envision the phony laughter, overblown excitement, and someone, probably Mom, saying, "Isn't it nice having everyone together?" As if everyone included me. As if I hadn't spent the last decade as a fuzzy background character in every family memory. Mom was plating scrambled eggs like she was auditioning for a lifestyle magazine brunch spread when I entered the kitchen. Dad browsed his phone at the table. Olivia drank almond milk from a wine glass barefoot. Mother said, "Good morning," without looking up. "Hope you slept okay in the guest room." The mattress has a personality, I said. Making coffee? She laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. Performing through breakfast was our usual routine. No catching up. No one asked about my employment, how I was doing, or if I was still living in that small apartment with the squeaky stairs. I wasn't. Olivia discussed her planned trip to Barcelona and how lucky her parents were to support her goals. I nodded like a seat filler at an awards event without speaking. They didn't detect the envelope in my coat pocket. It would follow. Instead, I thought about everything that led up to this point. When I graduated high school, I received a partial scholarship that allowed me to work part-time. I recall sitting at the kitchen table with documents spread out and begging for a little help. Mom looked at me like I wanted to pawn her wedding ring. Dad mentioned tough timing, and we're still catching up from the bathroom remodel, which included Bluetooth-enabled bathtubs and heated floors. Olivia got a new automobile for her 18th birthday 2 months later. White leather seats, custom stereo, bow on top. She said they were the nicest parents ever and cried when they gave her the keys. I stood next to the recycling bin with a $20 bill and a "You're going places" graduation card. You know what? I departed for college. Took 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, ate too much instant ramen, graduated with honors, relocated to a new city, started anew. I never asked for anything else, and they didn't offer. I didn't call after being laid off 2 years ago. I didn't ask for help paying for my doctor's medicine when I was sick. I didn't ask when my flat flooded and I lost most of my furniture. I made do with a Craigslist old mattress. Olivia shared sponsored Instagram stories from Santorini. Sometimes I wondered if it was me. Maybe I was tougher to love, more guarded, less shiny. Maybe I should have joined a sorority, smiled more, and worn beige. If I'd played piano instead of diner shifts, people might have noticed me. They may have discovered I needed help if I hadn't made things so easy, always independent, always fine. But then I remembered my 8th birthday. I invited 6 kids and cooked cupcakes. Mom forgot to pick up pizza, so we ate saltine cheese slices. The event ended early since Olivia had a dance recital the next day. They said, "We'll make it up to you next year." Never did. Or my state science competition win. The school called home to inform them. "Nice job," was their final text. No supper, no frame plaque, no mention again. Olivia got a little role in a shampoo commercial, so they hosted a party with balloons and a future star. Cake. So, no, not me, never me. The change occurred earlier this year, not really looking for it. A local records office was where I went for unrelated address evidence for a job application. Administrative stuff. I saw a document with my name on it tied to an unfamiliar property address. I initially believed it was a typo or a similar name. Curiosity always spirals. I investigated. Several well-written emails, requests, and searches. The deeper I went, the tangles increased. There were unspoken, buried things. I'm the center. Not immediately, I didn't confront anyone. As usual, I watched and observed. Now I wasn't helpless. I had paper evidence. The more I discovered, the more tranquil I felt, like I'd been underwater my whole life and didn't realize it until I came up for air. They exploited me, not forgotten me. My name, rights, quiet. I had something to make them listen. The morning after breakfast, I changed upstairs. I took time. Allow them to congregate around the tree, exchange gifts, and enjoy their festive glow. They were partly unwrapped when I arrived. Olivia opened something pricey and pretended to be astonished. Mom had that misty gaze she saves for sharing. "You get any sleep?" Dad said. I grinned. "Enough." He nodded and watched Olivia admire her fancy tote. I sat silently, took the letter from my coat pocket, and placed it on the table with the coffee mugs and crumpled wrapping paper. No one noticed. Not yet. They would. Everyone notices eventually. Too late. They saw the envelope 10 minutes later. Mom noticed because God forbid anything sit on her reclaimed wood table without coasters, ceremony, or purpose. It seemed like a misdelivered bill or wedding invitation to her. "What's this?" she asked the room, not me. I took another drink of coffee and said, "That's from me." Dad looked over from where he was tearing up wrapping paper, perhaps hoping something had fallen beneath the tree. "You didn't have to get us anything," he replied, beaming like I gave them a stupid phrase mug. "I know," I answered. "I wanted to." That caught their attention. Mom sat down, turning the envelope. "Should we open it now?" I shrugged. "But I'd rather you didn't." Obviously, they opened it. Father glanced over her shoulder as she broke seal. For a moment, it was just paper slipping free and pages crinkling. Olivia carefully folded the handles of her new designer purse like a newborn named after a French city. Silence broke up. Thickened. No need to glance up, I could feel it. Something between realization and nausea, like realizing your coffee's milk is sour after swallowing. Dad exhaled with his nose. Mom was skimming quicker now, flipping to the second and third pages like she could outpace her reading. Olivia gazed. What is it? They remained silent. She tried again, louder. What's going on? Still nothing. That was my signal. I figured it was time you knew. I stood slowly. Merry Christmas. Mom eventually inquired, what is this? Her voice was calm, not furious or confused. That, I add, is a copy of Grandpa Arthur's will. She blinks. I've seen his will. We handled the estate. No, I answered. You handled what you told me was the estate. You never showed me the full will, just said he left a few keepsakes and some cash that went toward funeral expenses. Staring at me, he blinks too much. That version didn't mention the rental property in Old Briar, I said. Probably because you were already collecting rent from it by then. Dad dropped the papers on the table like they burnt him. Where did you get this? Oh, you know, I said. Public records, title searches, tax filings, archived emails, a couple phone calls, a very patient lawyer. Olivia finally stood. Wait, what rental property? The one by the park? I asked her. The one you used for that photo shoot last year? Yeah, that one. She opened her mouth but said nothing. Mom started speaking again. Sweetheart, this isn't what it looks like. I grinned. That's funny, because it looks like you used my name, my inheritance, and my legal rights to fund your lifestyle while telling me there was nothing left for me. It wasn't like that, she rushed. It was complicated. It wasn't, I said. The will is extremely clear. The house was left to me, sole beneficiary, full title transferred, which means all that rent you've been collecting? Technically stolen? And the renovations? Unauthorized. Dad scratched his temples like this conversation was causing a headache. I hoped so. I knew you wouldn't understand, he murmured. You're always so dramatic. It made me giggle. Right, I'm dramatic. You edited me out of a family portrait and committed inheritance fraud, but sure. Let's blame my tone. Olivia was perplexed, as if someone had pulled the rug out from under her and she hadn't fallen. But that house paid for my tuition. I know, I answered. And the car, and the Mexico trip, and probably a few handbags along the way. Her words were, that's not fair. You didn't need it, you were always the independent one, you never asked for help. Because I was told there was nothing to ask for, I add. You made sure of that. Mom's voice became gentle and delicate, like when she returned something at a boutique without a receipt. We didn't think you'd want the responsibility. You were busy. You were always so far away. I was far away, I add, because you made it very clear I wasn't welcome here. Chair pushed back. Dad. You need to calm down. And you, I continued, facing him, need a lawyer. He froze. I'm not suing, I said. Yet. But I've officially reclaimed ownership of the property. The tenants have been notified. Rent payments will now go to me. Your access to the house is revoked. Mom looked tearful. But that house was our income. We depended on that? Tilted my head. Then maybe you shouldn't have stolen it. We're family, she muttered. No, I answered. You're people I used to be related to. There's a difference. Olivia crossed arms. You think this makes you better than us? No, I answered. Just not beneath you anymore. The silence wasn't peaceful. Loaded, dense quiet made your ears ring. No one moved. No one breathed. Dad regarded the envelope as if it may explode. Mom's face relaxed. Olivia looked like she needed a pinch to wake up. I grabbed my coat. Wait, Mom stood. Can't we at least talk about this? You just did, I said. For years. Every time you made a decision without me. Every time you left me out. Every time you told me I'd understand someday. Dad clenched his jaw. If you leave now, don't bother coming back. Standing at the entrance, I looked at them one last time. I think that's the first thing we've agreed on. Then I left. The air was keen, cold, and clean. It hit my lungs like a reminder that I was alive and standing. I got behind the wheel, started the engine, and drove. I didn't weep, didn't smile, just breathed. Sometimes the strongest statement is silence. Walking away is sometimes the loudest shout. 3 weeks elapsed before the first message arrived. Mom's short, polite, polished message seemed like she'd rewritten it 5 times and wasn't sure it would work. Hi sweetheart, we've been talking and we think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we chat sometime this week? Hope you're well. Love you. No punctuation, just love you in the wrong place. I remained silent. Another 2 days later. Please don't let this one thing ruin everything. Olivia is very upset. Dad's trying to stay calm, but you know how he gets when he feels blindsided. Unless he commits fraud. Not after years of lying to his daughter. No, feels surprised. Poor guy. So I remained silent. Dad left a voicemail. I didn't listen. I erased the notification after staring at it. He last called me kiddo, when I volunteered to help him set up his retirement account, and he remarked, "Let's leave the money stuff to people who understand it." Right. Like him. Then followed the email. You really think this makes you the winner? Fine. Take the house. But don't come crying back when you realize money doesn't buy family. The next day, Mom and Dad are really stressed. They're talking about selling the condo. That's what you wanted? Congrats. That one I read twice, not because I felt horrible, but to understand how much my property loss was affecting the family finances. The house underpinned everything. Rent from 3 units paid for their home, vacations, Olivia's education, and even really good skincare. When I returned it, the machine stuttered. I hadn't even requested back rent. Not yet. In spring, mutual acquaintances whispered. A neighbor said Mom and Dad were refinancing their condo. Another said Dad had started consulting, which meant cold calling past clients to see if they owed him a favor. Mom worked weekends at a downtown store she used to buy at. She ordered yoga clothes for influencers, perhaps thinking it was temporary. Olivia, living at home again. City apartments were too pricey. Customers stopped. It was unclear if her art collaborative disbanded or imploded, and I didn't care. She raised $83 on her new creative chapter GoFundMe. $2 came from my ex-boyfriend. Why that detail made me laugh is beyond me. I repaired the house. My home. At first, it was dusty and neglected, but solid. I had a contractor touch up the paint and replace the windows. Most of my parents' furniture was donated. I kept one chair, a navy blue armchair I faintly recognized from childhood, the only one without strings. Kind tenants. After I cut their rent by $50, one of them wrote me a thank you message saying I was the first landlord who treated them like a human being. That meant more to me than my parents' rehashed apologies. It's funny what you notice when the noise stops. Though heavy and personal, the silence becomes peaceful, like space to stretch. I stopped checking my phone hourly. The next guilt trip no longer worried me. Sleeping through the night began. I got a note in my mailbox one afternoon. A genuine letter, not an email or text. Mom wrote the front. I waited a minute before opening it to remember the occasion, not because it was sincere. Her perfume permeated the envelope. The best part was, "You've always been so strong. We didn't realize you needed anything from us." That's what people say when they benefit from your silence and need an excuse for never asking why you stopped talking. She said, "We hope someday you'll come home. Maybe we can start over. Maybe we can be a family again." No restitution statement. The stolen wealth, deceit, and being cropped from the family portrait like a bad ex were ignored. The letter went in a drawer. Kept it. No response either. That was her final direct contact. I met my former neighbor at a bookstore 3 years later. I grinned and stated I was still handling the property. She paused before responding, "I hear Mom and Dad had a rough time of it." I remained silent. She nods. "Well, you look happy. That's good." And I was. I am. I live in the house. Not out of necessity or spite, but because it's quiet. I own it. Birds and sunlight replace footsteps outside my bedroom door and passive-aggressive comments about how I never call. Rebuilt backyard garden, repainted front steps. Windowsill plants thrive on sunlight and minimal expectations. I have a photo of me holding the keys in front of the house on my mantle. No one else visible, just me. This is my favorite shot because no one was cropped. I occasionally hear from them. One Christmas card simply, "Thinking of you. Hope you're well," no return address. I didn't reply. Interestingly, I'm no longer angry. I'm not seeking justice, closure, or an apology. My name, place in the world, and story are mine, which they never gave me. I thought if I worked hard and earned it, they'd love me like Olivia. Real love doesn't have to be earned. You freely give it. They gave me conditions. I gave me everything else. No, I don't miss them. I don't replay talks. I don't expect dramatic reunions. I don't imagine a flawless apology that fixes everything. As I fixed it, no bow or benediction came with my life. It came from walking away, doing the hard thing. It turned out I only needed that present. 8 months pregnant, I brought my kids home hoping for a warm Christmas. One look inside and I knew we were not welcome. I realized we didn't belong as soon as the door opened. With wine glasses already poured, each seat identified precisely, and all the other grandchildren sat and smiling like a stock photo family, the table was arranged like a magazine spread. My brother was also present. The golden boy. Enjoying the warmth of his most recent promotion. When he saw me enter with the children, he even had the gall to chuckle. "Oh," Dad murmured, his face pressed hard and his arms folded. "We didn't anticipate your arrival." "Yeah, obviously," Bryce said, laughing aloud, arrogantly, and theatrically. "Why is she in this place?" He smiled as if I were the office intern who happened to walk into a board meeting by mistake. I waited for Mom to say something, anything at all, but she kept moving napkins around as if the symmetry of the forks were more significant than her real daughter, who was standing at the door with 2 bewildered children. As if that resolved the matter, Dad murmured, "There aren't any seats left. No happy Christmas. No embracing the children, nothing at all." "Well, you can come in, but the kids will have to sit somewhere else," he said, sounding benevolent. At the table already were the other grandchildren. Of course, Bryce's children. The grandchildren were the important ones. I tasted blood because I bit my tongue so hard. I didn't speak louder. I refrained from crying. Calm as ever, I simply smiled at Bryce. "I suppose I'm useless now that Bryce has a fancy title, huh?" Bryce gave an eye roll. "Helpful? Nobody requested your assistance." "That's perfect." I took my phone out of my coat pocket. "Nice to know," I answered with ease. "That implies that I will no longer be making mortgage payments." There was silence, as if I had turned off the lights on the Christmas tree. Dad's expression went cold. In fact, Mom stopped fiddling with her forks. Suddenly less arrogant, Bryce sat up straighter. "You're kidding," he stated bluntly. I gave a headshake. "Number, you seem to be well without me now. You are therefore on your own." I looked at my children. "Come on. We're heading home." "Wait," Mom said at last, her voice trembling. "Are you really going to leave?" I remarked, "You just said we weren't welcome," as I started to go toward the door. "I'm paying attention." My younger sister, Marley, was standing in the corner just before I left. She remained silent. She simply stood there with her hands in her hoodie pockets, her eyes downcast, and her face etched with humiliation. I didn't let her stop me. Nobody did. It was a calm drive home. The kind of silence that, even when the radio is on, crackles. Grasping the present bag we were never able to offer, my youngest gazed out the window. Without a word, my oldest leaned his head against the seat. Even though he didn't yet have the words, I could see he understood. What prevented Grandpa from wanting us there? My child requested in a tiny voice. My hands remained solid on the steering wheel. I said, "Because some people lose the ability to be kind. However, we don't. We recall." "Belly first," Caleb greeted us at the entrance. "How was it then?" I arched an eyebrow. "We arrived without an invitation." His jaw fell. "You're not serious." I gave a headshake. I then severed the cord. "No more mortgage payments. Allow Bryce to solve it." Caleb blinked. "You actually did that?" I gave a nod. Directly before the Christmas ham. After giving me a long look, he just muttered, "Damn," and gave me a shoulder rub. I must admit that I felt lighter. No more guilt trips from Mom about how difficult things have been, and no more sporadic calls from Dad requesting a small transfer. My family only recognized me when they were broke, so I could finally sleep at night without worrying about whether they were draining my bank account. A week went by. Then my phone chimed one night just after midnight. Once. Twice. Then 4 more times. I never even checked. I recognized the person already. "Mom." I allowed it to ring. Caleb groaned as he rolled over next to me. She is tenacious. One more buzz. It was a message this time, but not from her. From Marley. "Pick up. It's serious." My stomach nodded. I made a call. Marley responded right away, breathing rapidly. "It's Dad, he has aches in his chest. Mom is going crazy." In bed, I sat up. "Did she make a 911 call?" "Number, she gave me a call. Then you." "She did, of course." Marley paused. She started by trying Bryce. He didn't respond. He hasn't given her a call since Christmas, she said. Ever since his dismissal. I blinked. Hold on, what? Marley let out a breath. Indeed. He was fired. He was set up by a guy he believed he was dating, some sort of fraud. He could be sued. Back against the headboard, I sank. Karma, eh? This year, it was quick and on time. She would like you to attend, Marley said quietly. I shut my eyes. To be clear, I wasn't cold-hearted. However, it was difficult to ignore the picture of me standing in that hallway with my children gripping my coat and hearing that there was no space for us. I sighed nonetheless. I'll be there. I didn't let Caleb stop me. Don't let them pull you back in, he said as he kissed my forehead. I arrived without a knock. With one hand on his chest and perspiration streaming down his cheeks, Dad was slumped in a recliner. It appeared as though Mom had been crying for hours. Panic was thick in the air. Thank God, she said, hurrying toward me. Your dad is having trouble breathing. Have you made an ambulance call? She blinked. I assumed you. I took my phone out. Really, Mom? The paramedics arrived quickly, hooked him up. Vitals were checked. One said, it's not a heart attack. However, his blood pressure is really high. Caused by stress. I gave a snort. Startling. They removed him. Mom looked at me as if I were a lifeline while she stood there wringing her hands. She muttered, we need help. I gave her a direct look. No. She recoiled as if I had given her a slap. However, I didn't feel bad for once. I was liberated. Have you ever watched someone drop a dish, watch it break, and then merely take a step back and blame gravity instead of picking it up? My family was like that. For 2 days following the hospital event, everything was oddly silent. No phone calls. Don't text. Perhaps, I thought, they had accepted it? That I had finished. That what I said was true. Naturally, I was mistaken. Marley's appearance at my door was the first step. Dark circles, a pulled-up sweatshirt, and a habit of gnawing on the inside of her cheek as if it were owed money made her appear as though she hadn't slept in days. She was carrying a rumpled envelope in one hand and stuffed the other deep in her coat pocket. I pulled the door open. Is everything all right? Explain okay, she murmured as she entered. The envelope fell to the kitchen table. Mom said that. I kept my hands off of it. She said you would block her number, so she asked me to deliver it personally. Yes, I did. Marley let out a sigh. She is in a difficult situation. Dad is still being monitored at the hospital. They are unable to stabilize his blood pressure. When you try to support yourself with your children and one of them eventually says no, that's what happens. Marley took a quick look at the infant crib that Caleb and I had partially put together earlier. They assumed you would give in? Well, I said, they made a bad gamble. Then she let the hammer fall. Bryce spent the money from the mortgage. I went cold. What? The final payment, the money you sent them. The mortgage was never paid. Bryce received it from them. My molars screamed as my jaw clamped so tightly. Everything? Almost $5,000, she said with a nod. Mom told me that since he recently received a promotion, they offered him the money to help him advance. He went on a weekend trip with that guy, bought some furniture, and then everything fell apart. My stomach dropped. And now? The promotion has now ended. The man abandoned him. He is also being investigated. The business believes he participated in a conspiracy to transfer funds using fictitious vendor invoices. However, it turns out that he was only the fall guy. He was, of course. I laughed resentfully. To be clear, they stole money from their daughter, who has 2 children and a baby on the way, and gave it to their son, who lost his job and could face legal action. I'm supposed to tidy it up now. Marley gave a silent nod. I whispered. They never really learn. I walked over to her. And you? What are you standing at? I told them I agreed with you, she said after hesitating. I was astonished by that. And my dad told me to leave. Claimed that I didn't belong in their home if I wasn't going to provide for them like a real daughter. I gazed at her. Wait, you were expelled? Marley gave a shrug. I gathered my belongings and departed. At the moment, I am in a motel. I said, the hell you are, right away. Go gather your belongings. You intend to remain here. Marley appeared in disbelief. Are you serious? You already have too much on your plate. I put a hand on her shoulder and murmured, Marley, you're not them. I also don't abandon folks. She let out a breath, her eyes slightly watering. I'm grateful. The phone turned into a battlefield over the course of the following few days. Missed phone calls. Voicemails filled with anger and guilt. You're cruel. You lack gratitude. This family is being ruined by you. I didn't respond. Not once. Mom genuinely said, Bryce needs you. At the end of one voicemail. He is your brother. Yes, the same brother that made fun of me for missing out on Christmas dinner. The same person who said I wasn't required. Marley and I rapidly settled into a rhythm. She helped me paint the nursery, took the guest room, and carried food home without asking. Caleb was remarkably laid back about it. He even joked that we had become a strange sitcom trio. However, the tranquility was short-lived. I heard a car pull into the driveway on Saturday afternoon while Caleb and I were assembling the crib. I took a quick look through the blinds. Mom. Untidy hair? Swollen eyes? Shoulders slumped like a paper woman. Astonishing, I whispered. Rising from the Allen wrench, Caleb peered up. Do I need to hide? I chuckled to myself. Alluring. Like it owed her money, she banged on the door. I opened it, but I remained motionless to allow her entry. Ah, she said in a raw whisper. Please. I folded my arms. What are you looking for? Your dad. He remains unwell. Additionally, we risk losing the house if we fail to make the next payment. I remained silent. She dabbed at her face. We had faith in Bryce. We believed he would look after us. We were mistaken. I arched an eyebrow. You think? She raised her head, remorse shining in her eyes. We were not perfect. I am aware of that. You are our daughter, though. We require assistance. I didn't do it. You realize what's amusing? After a time, I said. You didn't spend the money I provided you for the house. As though it were his birthright, you gave it to Bryce. I'm the fallback option now that he has stopped talking. Once more. She broke down in tears. Please, Aya, I'm at a loss for what to do. I grinned, gently yet firmly. Work it out. She blinked. That's not what you mean. Yes. I began to shut the door. She lost her temper at that point. You owe us. I went cold. Pardon me? We brought you up. Fed you. Paid for your university education. Are you simply going to leave us when we need you now? I gave a chilly laugh. A daughter was not raised by you. A safety net was raised by you. A backup plan. And you know what? I now have my own family. My children come first. Anger curled her mouth. You resemble your father exactly. Perhaps. However, I'm not foolish enough to ruin my life for those who just come when they're in need of money. In her face, I closed the door. She let out a muffled, enraged cry outside. And then there was a loud bang. I sprinted over to the window. She had kicked my car's side. Then she drove away. Caleb gave me the Oscar-winning look. Are you all right? He inquired. I gave a nod. Better than good. I assumed it would end with the car kick and the door slam. Mom's outburst felt like the last scene of a play that had already been cancelled without her realizing it. I thought perhaps, at last, they would retreat. However, my family doesn't die gracefully. Everyone inside the blast radius is gaslighted as they go down crying and kicking. My phone rang 3 days after the driveway incident. This time, Marley's name, not Mom's, was displayed on the screen. I replied. With a flat voice as if she already regretted being the messenger, she stated, They're trying to make a deal. I let out a sigh and sank into the chair in the living room. They certainly are. Now what? Instead of just giving them the money, they want to know if you would consider lending it to them. I burst out laughing. Marley went on, obviously reading from a script in his head. Or perhaps you could temporarily place the mortgage in your name, and they'll make monthly payments to you. Did they say that really? Verbatim. I turned to see Caleb folding little onesies in the nursery as if it were a holy rite. I squinted. I'm going to assume that Bryce hasn't replied to them yet. Number complete silence on the radio. His accounts are locked. They are looking into him. And when the heat got to him, his boyfriend abandoned him. I cocked my head. This year, karma is ahead of schedule. Marley remained silent for a while. Ah, they're afraid. Really afraid. They are unlike anything I have ever seen. Well, I stated plainly. They need to experience what it's like to be completely helpless. A pause occurred. Just to be sure, Marley said quietly. Is there anything they could say to get your assistance? No. She let out a breath as if she had been clinging to a glimmer of hope for resolution. All right. Excellent. Since I informed them that I concur with you. I blinked. You told them? Hold on. Yes, she replied. I had had enough of acting. They treated you unfairly, I told them. That you were exploited. Perhaps none of this would have occurred if they had made even half the effort to help you that they did for Bryce. I remained silent for a moment. Something strange and unexpected clenched in my throat. And Dad lost it, she stated bluntly. Told me to pack my things and leave if I wasn't loyal to this family. I took a seat in front. What did you do too? I went out. I grinned, simultaneously feeling pleased and protective. Well done, girl. I was hoping they'd realize they pushed too far, Marley went on. That they would express regret. Mom attempted to call you again instead, accusing you of betraying them. I gave a sour laugh. They behave as though allegiance is worth money. As if, simply because they gave birth to us, we owe them unquestioning loyalty. Ah, they're falling apart. Everything, the home, the money. Even the way they look. At church, everyone is aware of Bryce. They feel ashamed. Let them feel ashamed. And then there was a knock. Over the phone, Marley heard it. Was that? Glancing through the slats, I made my way to the entrance. Bryce. Oh, you must be joking with me. Would you like me to remain on the line? Marley made the offer. I grinned. Number this is the one I've been anticipating. I didn't bother to cover my face as I cautiously opened the door. Bryce had a terrible appearance. Not shaven. Cheeks that are hollow. Wearing a pricey jacket that no longer suited his shoulders properly. Ah, he muttered in a strained tone, can we have a conversation? I simply moved out of the way so he could enter without responding. He did not sit. Stood there in the center of my living room, his eyes flitting about as if he couldn't stand staring at me for too long. I made a mistake, he began. I'm not joking. He flinched. They said that I was the reason you stopped helping. No, Bryce. Because of them, I ceased to assist. You were simply the last straw. He swallowed hard and nodded. I had no idea they had given me your money. They simply stated that they had put it aside. If I knew, I wouldn't have accepted it. I extended a hand. Don't tell lies. You usually take it, therefore you would have taken it anyhow. That is how we differ from one another. You anticipate receiving a bailout. I anticipated surviving on my own. He winced. I am aware of my error. Ah, I lost everything. My work. My standing. I was taken advantage of by the guy I was seeing, played me like a complete idiot. I shrugged and replied, I could have warned you. But at Christmas I was too busy getting treated like trash. He shut his eyes. I'm worthy of that. You do damn it right. Silence fell. I came to ask for help, he stated after giving me a serious look. I squinted. You're really brave. I'm not requesting money, he added hastily. I simply need somewhere to stay. Only for a short time, perhaps a week. I've been lounging on the couch and I'm at a loss for things to do. I blinked slowly. After everything, do you really think I'm going to take you in? There is nowhere else for me to go. I folded my arms. You possess them. There are those who gave you thousands without asking. The people who consistently picked you over me. They expelled me. My mouth fell open. Hold on, what? He gave a resentful nod. I told them I couldn't help with anything financially after I lost my job. After the whole incident with the company. And Dad simply lost it. I was dead weight, they said. Said that he ought to have disconnected me years ago. Then instructed me to get my belongings. I gazed at him. So, let me clarify something. The moment you received your promotion, they tossed me out, both financially and emotionally. They put all of their money on you. And they kicked you out when you failed. His jaw tensed as he nodded. They took advantage of me. Similar to how they took advantage of you. I gave him a serious look. At last, you understand, I muttered. Dejected, he stood there. He said, I'm not staying forever. All I need is somewhere to breathe. I looked back at my brother after glancing down the hallway where Marley was playing Uno with my children. All right, I replied. The couch is yours. No grievances. Have no expectations. I'll kick you out personally since you act entitled. He gave a quick nod. I won't. I promise. That evening, Bryce sat quietly on the couch as Marley cooked popcorn in the kitchen and Caleb adjusted the baby monitor. He was curled up with a blanket and had a look of humility on his face that I had never seen before. And I realized for the first time that I was no longer angry. I had just finished. I'm done being the backup. All the others have been held together. I'm done acting like self-respect was more important than blood. It was also pleasant. 3 months. That is the amount of time that has passed since I last spoke with my folks. No voicemails that make you feel guilty. Not at 11 p.m. crises. Not a drive-by drama. Nothing but quiet. And the beauty of that silence is beyond description. It's quiet in my house now. Marley's still here, but only temporarily. She's been saving up for her own apartment and already has a spot in mind. Bryce? He stayed for almost 2 weeks. The first few days were awkward, like two ex-rivals imprisoned in the same sitcom. But slowly, something altered. Without being asked, he began to assist. Got groceries. Cleaned the dishes. Even assisted Caleb in completing the crib. Baby clothes were folded like origami by the man who used to laugh in my face. That is what humility does to a person. One peaceful morning, he promised to call and left a thank you note. Strangely enough, he kept it. I get a text about once a week. Occasionally, it's just a meme. A check-in at other times. Although we are not close, we are now honest. That's a beginning, and me? I can breathe more easily. The baby will be born any day. Being a big sibling is something my oldest talks about as if it were a promotion. Caleb has never been more thrilled and worn out. I've made our house a haven for recuperating siblings, he quips. Perhaps I have. And perhaps that's all right. Something I didn't anticipate? They are not missed. Yes, I do miss the thought of them. The idealized portrayal of parents who love unconditionally, don't keep score, and wouldn't dump their daughter as soon as a more attractive model appeared. However, the authentic versions? The ones who repeatedly selected Bryce. Who viewed my assistance as a duty instead than a favor. I don't even miss them. One Saturday afternoon was the lone true surprise. When an unknown automobile drew up to the curb, Marley and I were enjoying some lemonade on the porch while assessing the neighborhood's gardening. A female emerged. Older, slim, anxious energy. Marley froze next to me and said, "Mom." "Really?" I whispered. I believed we were finished. Slowly, as if expecting the ground to turn away, she ascended the trail. Without a grin or a greeting, I stood with my arms crossed. "Ah," she uttered. Dry and strained voice. "I must speak with you." "I don't believe you do. If it weren't important, I wouldn't be here. When I needed you, you were never there." She took a swallow. "Your dad is still ill. According to the physicians, stress is to blame. He is unable to stabilize his blood pressure. Our mortgage payments have been past due. And Bryce?" Her voice trailed off. "He's not returning." I gazed at her. In a whisper, she said, "We gave him everything. Every penny we have saved. Our whole trust. We thought he would look after us." "You had faith in him," I clarified. "Not within me?" She gave me a frantic look. "We did something wrong." "No, Mother. Forgetting to send a birthday card is an error. There was a pattern to everything you did." Her eyes filled with tears. "The house is going to be lost." I gave a shrug. "It sounds familiar." Her mouth quivered. "Are you truly going to let us disintegrate?" "You did already," I responded quietly. "It wasn't until the money stopped that you noticed." Shuddering, she took a step closer. "We require assistance." I gave a headshake. "You must assist yourself. Similar to what I have been doing for years." She gave me a blink. "So that's it? Are you finished?" "As soon as you informed my children that they would not be seated at your table, I was done." That was like a kick to the stomach. She inhaled nervously. "You were raised by us. Expectations were raised by you. Yes, you fed me. I was housed by you. But you made me into an ATM with a heartbeat the moment I was able to breathe on my own." Her voice changed. "You're being mean." I chuckled. "It's funny. I used to believe that you only called when the rent was due and ignored my birthdays." She parted her lips to retaliate, then shut them. It was visible to me. That little flash of insight. She was unable to deny that glimmer of reality. With composure and finality, I said, "I hope you figure things out. But I'm no longer your answer." I pivoted to enter. She took hold of my arm. One final desperate shot. "Ah, we are your family." I gave her a stern, unflinching stare. This residence is occupied by my family. You are merely a former debtor of mine." I withdrew and went back inside. She didn't follow. A couple of days later, Marley entered the kitchen with her phone in her hand. "You know what?" she said. I arched an eyebrow. "The house was put up for sale." I blinked. "That quick?" I suppose they had no other choice. I remained silent for a while. I just stirred my coffee. How are you feeling? She inquired. Free, I murmured. I meant it too. I occasionally ponder what would have happened if I had simply continued to make payments. If I had remained cheerful over yet another Christmas meal with my children seated at the foldable table and Bryce receiving the centerpiece. If I had told myself it wasn't so horrible and ignored that gut punch moment. However, I didn't. I got to my feet. And they were the ones left in the cold for the first time in my life.